to GB News. It's the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Patrick Christys here, and the sun is shining for another wonderful day on the Mall and at Buckingham Palace. And I've got a lot on the agenda today, ladies and gents. Should we change our national anthem? Some people think it should be Sweet Caroline or even Wonderwall. And just over my shoulder here was a massive security event last night. I'll be talking about all of that. How safe really are we at this coronation? But there's some non-royal news coming your way as well. Should we ban cold callers? Should we ban smoking? And is AI going to take over the world? I've got all that coming your way and much, much more. Patrick Christys at the Palace. Well, as you can see, the security operation is still very much in force after last night's incident, but it is doing nothing to quell the excitement of these wonderful crowds here. I'm going to be talking to you throughout the course of this show. But right now, I've got to get from here into our studio. I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you and good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 3. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Russia's accusing Ukraine of trying to assassinate President Putin in an overnight drone attack. A video appears to show the Kremlin being hit late last night. Moscow says 2 drones targeted President Putin's residence, but they managed to thwart the attack, disabling the aircraft with electronic defences. Russia's parliament speaker has demanded the use of weapons that are capable of destroying what it described as the Kyiv terrorist regime. Ukraine denies any involvement and has sounded air alerts in the capital and other eastern regions. 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security surrounding the King's coronation. The Met Police has confirmed the scale of the operation is bigger than the Queen's funeral. The force also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates, and there was a controlled explosion after he asked to speak to a soldier before telling officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. The Met's Deputy Assistant Commissioner says the incident was handled swiftly.
We got that incident under control extremely quickly. So the male was detained within seconds. He was arrested within five minutes, so under control extremely quickly. We have debriefed this, and we're absolutely confident in our plans. And let me just reassure London that we are tried and tested at this. We're not doing this alone. We've reviewed our plans and are absolutely confident that we will deliver this in a manner that will be safe and secure for everyone that actually comes to London.
Labour has criticised the government for failing home buyers. It's after the English Housing Survey found only 1/3 of children born in England this year will own a home by the time they reach their 50s if current trends continue. During Prime Minister's questions, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer suggested Rishi Sunak was out of touch with voters.
£9,000 would take 4 years. They think it's funny that 4 years for the average saver to save £9,000, or to put it a different way in terms the Prime Minister will understand, roughly the annual bill to heat his swimming pool. But for most people, 4 more years of scrimping is a hammer blow to their ambitions.
The Prime Minister responded by saying the opposition is at fault.
Let's talk about the Labour record on house building, Mr. Speaker. In London, the former Conservative mayor built 60,000 affordable homes in his first 5 years in office. How many do the current Labour mayor manage? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. In Wales, we need 12,000 new homes a year. How many have Labour built in the last year? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. As ever, Labour talk and the Conservatives deliver.
Downing Street says Partygate investigators Sue Gray's refusal to cooperate with a government probe into her move to a senior Labour role is obviously disappointing. Number 10 also denied claims the Prime Minister is pursuing a vendetta against the former senior official. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, has said it's up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the start date in her new role. Nurses in England are threatening to return to the picket line despite a new pay deal being agreed for the majority of NHS staff. In a letter to the Health Secretary, the Royal College of Nursing said there'll be another ballot this month for further strike action to be held between June and December. ICU nurse Kelly Hopkins told us the government doesn't understand how difficult it is to work in her sector.
Just not prepared to listen to what we're saying. Conditions in A&E are horrendous. I did a shift last Saturday and I was nursing really sick patients on corridors. They've been there for days. How can you wash somebody? How can you give them the care that they deserve when you're on a corridor nursing somebody whose life is potentially at risk? And I just think they're out of touch. They just need to come down and see what it's like.
More than 7 million households will receive a £301 cost of living payment by the end of today. The money is part of a package of government support to help struggling households. A further £300 will be available for eligible families in autumn, and a similar payment will also be made in spring next year. This comes as research shows 7 out of 10 Scots are cutting back on essential items. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation says the number of people in a poor financial situation has increased from 65% last summer. The First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, has declared tackling poverty will be one of his government's priorities. And Royal Mail has unveiled 4 specially decorated post boxes to mark the upcoming coronation. The boxes in London, Edinburgh, Cardiff and in Hillsborough display the occasion's official emblem. The Westminster post box is situated close to Westminster Abbey, where the coronation will take place on Saturday. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome to GB News, and as you can tell, I am right here at Buckingham Palace as we gear up for the coronation on Saturday. But I've got to start with some dramatic news from Russia, because the government there has said that the Kremlin in Moscow has come under attack from what is believed to be Ukrainian drones. They are describing it as an assassination attempt on President Putin. Ukraine's government say they have nothing to do with it. I do believe I'm going to go now to our Paddington studio where Mark White joins us. He is our home and security editor who has much more on this story for us. Mark, what's gone on?
Afternoon, Patrick. There's no doubt that this is a significant escalation, a claim by the Russian authorities that Ukraine is behind what they say was an attempt to detonate 2 drones over the Kremlin. There is remarkable footage, unverified, but which appears to show the moment in which a drone flying over the Kremlin, you can see a faint object, then an explosion just over the dome of the Kremlin, one of the Kremlin buildings there. There's footage from another angle that appears to show that same dome on fire. The Russian authorities have said that there was no significant damage to the Kremlin. Say that footage, though, does show fire. It may have been from the debris of the drone itself, rather than necessarily the fire taking hold on the dome, on the roof structure. But that escalation, as it will be seen by Moscow, could certainly have some significant repercussions. Now, we have to say, for Ukraine's point of view, they are saying through a presidential spokesman this afternoon that they have had absolutely nothing to do with this incident in Moscow last night. For Russia's part, they are adamant. They say this was a planned terrorist act and an assassination attempt. on the president and an attack on Russia. A spokesman for the Russian government said that Russia reserves the right to take retaliatory measures wherever and whenever it is deemed necessary. Now, what's so worrying about this, Patrick, is you'll remember from the early months of the war in Ukraine, the invasion, there were all of these persistent reports that the Russians were out to target and assassinate President Zelensky, reports that the Wagner group of mercenaries had operatives in Kiev itself looking to target President Zelensky. But as the months passed, those attempts, or the belief that there were any significant attempts to go after the president, faded. And we've had, of course, in the past year, lots of world leaders, including UK leaders and European leaders, that have headed to Kiev and have taken part in walkabouts in the city centre there, under heavy security, of course, but without incident. Will that change now in light of what Russia says was a deliberate attempt to target the Kremlin and the Russian president itself? Well, I think that is very likely indeed. Regardless of what Ukraine might say, Russia are adamant that this was an attempt that was perpetrated by Ukraine.
Mark White, thank you very much, our Home and Security Editor, and we will have much more on that developing story throughout the course of the day. But as Mark rightly said there, massive concerns now about what this means for the escalation of that conflict going forward and the reaction, and let's be honest, there will be a reaction from the Kremlin, from Moscow, from Putin. But now, let's look ahead to Saturday's Coronation. And of course, we do start with calls to replace the national anthem. What do you make of this? GBviews at GBnews.uk. I want to know what you think about this. God Save the King has been sung since the 18th century. It is interwoven into the fabric of this country, isn't it? But a poll shows it's now unpopular with a significant number of people. So 1/3 of those asked by a poll in the Times say that it should be ditched. Now, yes, OK, that does mean that 2/3 of people think it shouldn't be, and that's all lovely. But here at GB News, we, of course, love the national anthem. We play it every single morning before our wonderful breakfast show. And so here's a little reminder, as if it were needed, of how rousing it can sound. This is from Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph last November. Take it away. Well, who better to talk about all of this than royal broadcaster and historian Rafe Hayden-Wanku, who's going to be joining me on and off throughout the course of this show. Rafe, what do you make of the fact that 1/3 of people apparently want to change our national anthem?
Look, we have a wonderful anthem. I think it's the second best melody after the French, La Marseillaise, but it's something we should actually celebrate in this country and take great pride in. We have the world's oldest national anthem. Its roots go back to the 17th century, although, as you said, it was first performed in the 18th century, 1740s, for King George II, an impromptu singing at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, where the melody was God Save Great George, our King. But the tune is so wonderful. The problem is today we hear it sung as a dirge quite often. It's never performed very well. But the melody is so fantastic that some of the world's best composers have incorporated it into their own works. Beethoven did 7 variations on God Save the King. Haydn, Liszt, Debussy, Paganini, Rossini. No other anthem has been incorporated by so many great classical composers.
Not Lady Gaga yet, then.
Not Lady Gaga. And remarkably, it's the national anthem of Liechtenstein, so good as the melody. Switzerland had it as its national anthem. And after the revolution, the Americans loved it so much they couldn't do away with it. Wow. It's now My Country 'Tis of Thee, one of their great patriotic tunes. We should all take great pride in it. Now, if you go and want to listen to the very best version, listen to Benjamin Britten's stirring arrangement, and the best of all, Edward Elgar wrote a movement so powerful that if you listen to that and you don't have a tear in your eye, you've got a cold heart.
Oh, well, there you go. Now, before I go back to Rafe, I went out and about a little bit earlier on, and I was chatting to some wonderful people who are lining them out, and can I just say how delightful it is to see so many happy, smiley faces here, and just an unashamed show of patriotism and just joy, really. And it is a nice change, frankly, from the drudgery of day-to-day life. But I went out and about and spoke to some of them about what they thought about the national anthem, whether they would change it, and what they made of some of the alternatives. And just before I go to that, I want to say some of the alternatives include Land of Hope and Glory. Okay, we've got Rule Britannia. Okay, a couple of classics there. We're doing all right so far. Sweet Caroline and Wonderwall by Oasis. Anyway, here's what the people had to say.
No. Yeah! We've got to keep the national anthem. Yes, definitely.
So you wouldn't...
We've had it for years and years. We don't want any change.
You wouldn't want Wonderwall by Oasis, though?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Definitely not.
So why do you think we need to keep our national anthem?
Because it's history. It's been around for years and years, so why change it?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. Sorry. No, I'm a traditionalist, and God save the King, and... yeah, no, not having any of that.
Can I give you a couple of options that they want to change it to?
Okay.
Rule Britannia.
I like Rule Britannia, but I'm sorry, our anthem's our anthem, and I'm not changing it.
You're going to be absolutely dead against Wonderwall by Oasis, then, aren't you?
Yes, but I do like Oasis, but no, I don't want that either. Okay. No, we keep what we got.
I love our national anthem. When I sing the national anthem, it comes from here. I sing it with pride, I sing it with immense meaning, immense feeling. My father taught me the national anthem. As a girl guide, I had to learn all the verses. How many children... don't ask me to sing them now, it's many years ago.
I won't ask you to sing it, but what I will say is you learnt that as a child, but it's the younger generation now who are most opposed to the national anthem.
But then they've not been taught what its meaning is. They've not been taught the importance of it. And maybe it's about education and love and passion.
Well, there we go. So some wonderful people there. I'm going to be checking in with them a little bit later on in this show. Rafe, not a fan of Wonderwall by Oasis?
I love Wonderwall. Morning Glory, wasn't that the album it came from?
Well, it's a bit early in the day for that, mate, but there we go. It's a family show, Rafe. It's a family show. No, but seriously, you don't think we should change it, obviously.
No, look, I absolutely adore Land of Hope and Glory. I adore Rule Britannia. If you're going to make Rule Britannia the actual national anthem, you'll be standing up for about 10 minutes. It's a very long piece of music, you know. Same thing with the Land of Hope and Glory. It's very long. Great patriotic tunes. We need to start singing 2 or 3 verses of God Save the King, and then you'll really... And if it's performed well, I'm sorry, it is the best out there.
A lot of people very concerned that it appears to be 42% of the under-25s who were the most adamant that we should change our national anthem. I think we all hope that they grow out of it, don't we? But moving on, matters more serious, and I think eagle-eyed viewers on GB News last night will have got quite a spectacle, but the security operation for the Coronation will be even bigger than planned. So it'll be bigger than what was carried out for the Queen's funeral. Police have confirmed today that 29,000 officers will be on duty in the lead up to Saturday's event and over the bank holiday weekend as well. I mean, the security presence is notable after last night's dramatic incident, actually, when a man was arrested after a suspected shotgun cartridges were thrown into the grounds of the palace. There's some footage on your screens there of an arrest taking place. And they were thrown into the grounds of Buckingham Palace, which is just behind me here, and he's been held on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon after a knife was also found as well. And the matter is not being treated as terror-related, so I want to make that very clear distinction there. But police carried out a precautionary controlled explosion, which could be heard live on GB News. And here is what happened during Jacob Rees-Mogg's show just after 8 p.m. last night.
We're just getting the latest word from the Metropolitan Police, and I don't know what it is.
Evacuate now.
We're going to have to evacuate now.
The police are live with us now and telling us that we've got to evacuate even
I don't
from this
see why we could possibly have to move.
So I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening from me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background. That's what it sounded like to me.
I mean, can I just say, you will never see anything more quintessentially British than a man in a double-breasted jacket not giving a single hoot about an explosion kicking off behind him while a seasoned royal correspondent there basically tells a police officer that he's staying exactly where he is and that there's nothing to worry about. I loved it completely. Ray Marquis is still with me now. Some matters serious about this then. That is a big concern. The police, 29,000 extra police officers will be on scene. And on top of that as well, I believe they're going to be given additional powers to essentially really act in a swift manner. That is not just for people like the chap last night who's believed to have done that, but also for Extinction Rebellion, for Just Stop Oil, and people from Republic as well have apparently been sent a letter to say, look, we're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Just Stop Oil, some reports have said that they've been encouraging people to have rape alarms deliberately to scare the horses that are going down the mall. So it's not just terrorist activity, actually. There is a problem here. Look, we need to pay tribute to the police. They get a lot of flack these days. But when it comes to security, Britain is one of the top 3 countries, along with Israel and America, for security. And we have to remember, as you just said, we're going to have thousands of police down here, not just lining the routes and so forth, but plainclothes police will be mingling around the crowds. We'll have snipers on rooftops. There's going to be airport-style security for people entering into these areas, and there's going to be a no-fly zone even over London. And most interestingly, the police actually have a record, a list of people called royal obsessives, on the negative and positive.
Yes.
And if any of those people come into London, they'll have their own security agent assigned to them to follow them around. And the police are going to be visiting convicted terrorists, warning them not to travel to London. And they did that for the Queen's funeral. It's particularly important because after Prince Harry published his memoir, Spare, he detailed how many people he had killed, and he spoke about killing people in a very cold manner. And as Di Davies, the respected former head of Royal Protection, said, he hasn't feared more for royal security for 25 years because of that. But I think with the amount of work that's been done into this, Operation Golden Orb is the name for it, I think people can feel very safe.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. And I am going to be returning to this because it caused a bit of a hoo-ha amongst some sectors. So Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion and the group Republic, who want the abolition of the monarchy, were quite angry at being sent letters by police forces and the Home Office to essentially just say, look, here's a bit of a warning, a shot across the bows, we are all over you like a rash. I think it's probably fair enough, to be honest with you. And as you will be seeing, I'll be talking to a lot of people up and down the Mall, and there is just unbridled joy and happiness here. And whatever your political views are, whatever your views about the monarchy are, do you really want to be that individual who ruins it for all of these very well-meaning, completely harmless individuals? And I'm not sure you do. You might be able to notice as well, behind me here, yesterday we had a lot of crowds just gathering by those flowers there, which Michael Cole was very focused on the idea. I had to make sure that they were called tulips and not poppies. And crowds behind me there. Now, they've all gone, because in response to yesterday, the police had basically said, look, no one's allowed there. So there we go. But I will be here all the way through until 6 o'clock, soaking up the atmosphere, soaking up the sun as well. I'm going to get a tan on one side of my face. And I'll be looking ahead to Saturday's coronation. I will also have, though, the rest of today's top stories. It is not just royal news in town. The government is spending £30 million on a major clampdown on fraud. Cold callers, they are the bane of many people's existence. They prey especially on the vulnerable in society, especially the elderly, and they need to be stopped. Oh, and George Osborne wants to ban smoking. Wow. From my cold, dead hands, George. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Patrick Christys here from the wonderful setting of Buckingham Palace. But now, how do you feel when someone rings you up offering to sell you something which will make you millions of pounds? Well, the government thinks cold calling is a fraudster's charter and wants it banned for the selling of financial products. They also are looking at introducing SIM card farms so they can tell when one SIM card is being used to pump out a load of calls. Rishi Sunak says that he's taking the fight to the con man and is setting up a new national fraud squad with 400 new specialist investigators, and not before time, because it is the bane of a lot of people's existences, especially a lot of elderly people. I'm joined now by Tony Sales, who's co-founder of We Fight Fraud. Tony, welcome to the show. Great to have you on there. Thank you very, very much for coming on. Now, look, just talk to me a little bit about these measures. So, banning cold calls on financial products. So, presumably, if you get anything where someone goes, I'm going to make you a millionaire, Rodney, this time next year, you can go, no, this is definitely a fraud. They're going to be able to track more calls as well, calls from one number from a load of different venues, etc. Do you think this will be good enough?
It's a start. It's a good start, I guess. The problem that we're going to face, and it's the problem that we faced the whole way through, is that a lot of people don't really understand how scams work. So we may block the numbers that are calling us, but where did those people get the information from? This comes from hacked data, breaches on sites, people giving away their data without even realising it, people selling their data without even realising it. That's how you really get to stem the flow. I've heard the argument about spoofing calls and stuff for a long time, and I guess that one of the very first things I showed when I got into fraud prevention was it's really easy to ring someone from a private number, and if your story is convincing enough, how do you stop that person on the other end of the phone actually parting with their money? And as history has shown us, the more the more we get better at defending certain types of scams, the more it's going to be pushed into another direction. So we've seen rises in romance scams, in all of these other places that fraudsters look to grab control of someone that they can absolutely target and get them to relinquish their funds. And this all comes back to what was being said at the end of that interview. It's all about awareness and making people aware. And of course, the very first thing that we say is, put the phone down if you don't think it's your bank, and you should definitely do that. You should never click on links that you don't know where they've come from. However, we have to get into a better place of understanding as the new digital world that we're living in. Most links that you click are not going to have malware in them straight away. It's going to be to get you to put your password in. And we like to educate people on what they should be putting in. Did they solicit this? You know, there's a whole load of stuff. We've forgotten about the old days of junk mail. We used to get our mailboxes would be full of junk mail, and most of us would just ignore it. Some people that were phishing, this is the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there were those days as well where someone, a cold caller, would do it in person. I'm sure they still do a bit, but you'd walk round to your nan's house or something and you'd find a bloke sitting in her living room trying to sell her a conservatory for 10 grand that she absolutely doesn't need. And it is a bit more high tech now. Can I just ask you, you've given some wonderful advice there, which is essentially, if you think there's anything suspect at all, bin the call off, right? Bin the call off completely. Your bank will never really ring you. The police will never really ring you like that. But look, if you don't mind me asking, if that's all right, and this is where if I've been fed some tough information here, please don't sue me. But I understand that you were one of Britain's biggest fraudsters. Is that right? And to the tune of millions. Is that right? So you know how to do it, man.
Yeah, I know how to do it, and I've kind of been banging the same drum. You know, the advice that I've been giving, Patrick, from day one, and I've been doing this for 13 years now, preventing fraud, is the exact same advice as I've always given, because it's us as humans that are the vulnerability. As much as we don't want to admit it, there's not a single computer anywhere on the planet serving a prison sentence, and that's because it's always a human behind it. It's always a human instigating it, and we've just got to get better at defending these type of attacks. Now, we say that our banks wouldn't text us or call us, but that's just actually not true, because our banks do text and call us, and this is mixed information. So I know that my bank have called me twice today and have texted me twice today, both from a mobile number and from their number. And that's a real call that they're actually trying to get hold of me. Now, I haven't solicited that call. However, I know in the background from the emails that they've been sending me that they are trying to contact me. So there's a lot of misinformation that people don't really understand, right? And it's always going to come back down onto us. What do you think? Is it someone trying to get you? If someone's trying to put you in panic and fear, they're trying to say that your money's going to get taken now, it's stolen, where we of the bank need to move it. The best possible place for your money to be is in your own bank account, and don't give no one any information. Put the phone down and call the bank separately from another number that you may Google and get to where you need to get to. Don't call the number back that's on your phone. And that, you know, this is the best possible bit of advice, because it could be your bank, but you need to just double check it. But put the phone down. Your bank is not going to put you into panic and fear, okay? And we need to be clear on that fact.
Absolutely, and I do think as well, if possible, and it's not always possible, but if possible, relatives and friends need to be a bit vigilant as well. If you start to think that maybe someone's getting conned, then just step in, have a little word. But look, thank you very, very much. It's absolutely fantastic to get you on the show, and really, really great insight into the world of fraud as well. That is the reaction to the fact that the government is going to bring in specialist fraud squads. Be very careful out there, people. They're getting more and more high-tech. You might think, you know, you've got all your wits about you and all of that, but it's easily done. You find yourself completely out of pocket. So, lots more to come between now and 4 o'clock. Wonderful people. I will be, of course, setting up camp in situ here at Buckingham Palace, but I will get the reaction from former Chancellor George Osborne, who's called for smoking to be banned. What do you make of that? I've got some strong views on that, let me tell you. And I'm going to get out and about and meet some of these royal superfans who are already here. Some fantastic people. I'll be talking to all of those. But first, it is time for your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Patrick, thank you very much, and good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Russia's accusing Ukraine of trying to assassinate President Putin in an overnight drone attack. A video appears to show the Kremlin being hit late last night. Moscow says 2 drones targeted President Putin's residence, but they managed to thwart the attack, disabling the aircraft with electronic defences. Russia's parliament speaker has demanded the use of weapons that are capable of destroying what it described as the Kyiv terrorist regime. Ukraine denies any involvement and has sounded air alerts in the capital and other eastern regions. 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security surrounding the King's coronation. The Met Police has confirmed the scale of the operation's bigger than the Queen's funeral. The force also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates, and there was a controlled explosion after he told officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. Downing Street says Partygate investigator Sue Gray's refusal to cooperate with a government probe into her move to a senior Labour role is obviously disappointing. Number 10 also denied claims the Prime Minister is pursuing a vendetta against the former senior official. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, has said it's up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the start date for her new role. And more than 7 million households will receive a £301 cost of living payment by the end of today. The money is part of a package of government support to help struggling households. A further £300 will be available for eligible families in the autumn, and a similar payment will also be made in spring next year. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2522 and 1.13242 euros. The price of gold is £1,609 and 64 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,798 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, for some, this might sound a little bit like wanting the nanny state to run our lives, but former Chancellor George Osborne has called for more to be done to stop us smoking and consuming unhealthy food and drinks, which is interesting because I have seen pictures of George Osborne smoking. So there we go. Speaking to the Times, he says that the government should raise the legal age for buying tobacco in order to phase out smoking. So not just ban it, we're raising the age for it. He also wants the sugar tax on soft drinks to be extended to include fruit juice, milkshakes, as well as biscuits and cakes. This, he says, will help fight obesity and cancer. So there we go. George Osborne has had that to say. With me now, I'm hoping might inject a little bit of common sense into proceedings here, is Christopher Snowdon, who's head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. The phrase "from my cold dead hands" comes to mind when I think of George Osborne.
With regards to the orange juice or the cigarettes, Patrick?
The cigarettes.
Cigarettes, yeah. I don't know where this comes from, really. I mean, he's got so much money, he doesn't have to answer to anybody. He can say what he wants, he can draw on his long experience in politics. But the best he can come up with is let's ban cigarettes and tax orange juice. For the avoidance of doubt for your viewers, orange juice is perfectly healthy. It has lots of vitamin C and protein. It is good for you. Don't drink it by the gallon, but don't be put off by drinking it, which, of course, is what would happen if we put an extra tax on it.
No, indeed. I mean, look, let's just play devil's advocate here for a second, Chris, and say that the NHS is absolutely on its knees. We've got waiting times through the roof. We've got, an obesity crisis. We've got more people clogging up not just their arteries, but in turn our NHS as well. Maybe this would be a solution, just ban the cigarettes and then that's that.
Well, it wouldn't. I mean, the economics of this are really quite clear. I mean, if you ban cigarettes, if everyone stopped smoking, then there'd be more people living to a longer age and they'd ultimately use more healthcare. I'm afraid that's the bottom line. I know people keep using this economic argument about all sorts of things, obesity as well as smoking, but I'm afraid it doesn't stack up. There is no benefit to non-smokers from smokers giving up smoking, financial or otherwise. Quite the contrary, actually, because if you ban cigarettes, you'd end up with a bit of a crime wave, which, of course, is what happened when they banned alcohol in America and over the countries. And it's what's increasingly happening in Australia and also, to some extent, New Zealand. New Zealand is going to be the first country probably to ban cigarettes, to taking all the nicotine out of them, which amounts to the same thing. And I suspect you're going to see a big crime wave there, which hopefully will put off politicians in other countries.
Yeah, with New Zealand putting some kind of age limit on it, we are confronted by the bizarre situation where there might be a 41-year-old man in a few years' time in in an off-licensed car park in New Zealand, asking a 42-year-old man to go in and buy him a deck of Marlboro Golds, you know, which I think is just bizarre. But even for people who think smoking is terrible, which of course it is, by the way, but people who think that it should be banned and people who want these sugar taxes, etc., 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 do they actually want to live in a country where the government can ban things like that? Because that's the concerning bit for me.
Well, I think some people do. Some people are just misanthropes, aren't they? You know, I've been talking a lot about gambling the last few days since the white paper came out, and about a third of the country would quite happily see gambling banned. You know, people are quite happy to see other people's pleasures banned. It's only when people wake up to the fact that this is an unending sort of steamroller of prohibition and nobody will be safe. Even coffee, I've seen today on Twitter, is now under attack. There's a group of people who think that caffeine's terribly dangerous for you. So look, no one is safe. And in a way, you know, Patrick, you know, smokers have kind of acted as a sort of buffer zone for the rest of society for a very long time. Once, you know, when in the days when smoking was tolerated, if not encouraged, it was very difficult to have a go at orange juice or even alcohol or, you know, any kind of food, because we already had this product in society that we tolerated, which was clearly much more dangerous than the rest of it. However, once you start talking about prohibiting smoking and clamping it down in the draconian way we have done the last 20 years, the question then is, what next? And there are lots of people standing up with their own suggestions of what next.
Yeah, indeed. And I think we got very used to rules during the pandemic, didn't we? And I think some people realised that they couldn't get up and get themselves dressed in the mornings unless, at the time, Boris Johnson had done some kind of national televised broadcast and told them that they had to. I think that's where we got to. And I'm wondering about the kind of creeping, asphyxiating hand of the state, really, on this stuff. But do you think, Chris, it might be a little bit hypocritical of George Osborne himself to be proposing all of this stuff?
Well, I saw a picture of him from only 18 months ago having a cigarette and apparently looking pensive, according to the tabloid newspaper. So I don't know whether he's given up and is one of these people who's you know, very irritable, grumpy ex-smoker who thinks everyone else should do the same thing, or if he's one of these weak-willed smokers who wants the whole world to change in order to give him the kick he needs to finally give up smoking. I don't know, but I hope we all ignore him.
Absolutely. Look, Chris, thank you very much. Great stuff. That's Christopher Snowden, there, who's Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. And I think, to summarise, you're saying there isn't particularly an economic case for banning things like that, because people, of course, contribute in tax, don't they? Also in the health sector now, I get that people think, well, our NHS is absolutely crippled and maybe anything that we can do in order to stop people getting ill is a good thing. But then what happens when they start living longer as well? It's a tight one, isn't it? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Let me know what you think about all of that. For me, it's pretty straightforward. I just don't want the government to be reaching into our lives and banning things, even if it is something as obviously unhealthy as smoking. But there we go. Now, the sun is, as you can all see, shining here, very much so, at Buckingham Palace. And there's a really happy feel about the place, and there genuinely is as well. I'm about to speak to some of the royal family's biggest fans. So I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and we are Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well,
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, hello everybody. I have made the mad dash from our studio just over the road here to the Mall. As you can see, the crowds are gathering. There is a palpable sense of excitement here, and it is wonderful. Loads of people are really enjoying themselves. But I'm going to pan round now to an absolute GB News fan favourite. Here she is. Lisa, how are you?
I'm smashing, Patrick. Hey, it's great to meet you in the flesh.
Absolutely. Now, people, eagle-eyed viewers and listeners will know you because we've interviewed you several times. And normally it's at your home.
Yeah, it is.
With how many thousands of pieces of memorabilia?
13,500 now. So.
13,500. And you've decided to bring some of that down here to celebrate the coronation from the Mall. So you're going to be camping out?
Yes, I am going to be camping out. That's it, I'm here now, nobody can move us.
So is this your tent?
Yes, that's my tent.
This is your tent. Shall we have a quick look at the back of it? So what have we got on the back here?
That is a knitted child's doll, knitted for me by an old school friend called Leslie, and I'm quite sure she's watching. And she insisted I brought it with us, so I brought it with us.
Oh, fantastic.
It's the most photographed Charles in London.
Absolutely.
At this moment.
So why are you so passionate about being here today, camping out and everything?
It's because I'm a monarchist, and for the whole of my life I pledged my allegiance to the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, and now this is a physical, visual display of my allegiance passing to the new King, to the new monarch.
Absolutely. Well, I've got to ask you now very quickly, because you will be singing God Save the King loud and proud on Saturday, won't you? What do you make of those people who want to change our national anthem?
I didn't know anybody wanted to change the national anthem.
There's
to what?
a third of people, they're talking. Can I hit you with a couple of options? So we're going to get live reaction now. A couple of the options,
Right, okay.
Land of Hope and Glory.
Yeah, I quite like Land of Hope and Glory.
So we're all right, that's okay.
Yeah, I like that. No, not for a national anthem, man.
No.
But I quite like that, yeah.
Okay, Rule Britannia.
I like Rule Britannia as well, that's okay. It seems a bit mad at times, like when you look at all the words in it.
Yeah, okay.
But can I just explain to your viewers, right, that when you sing God Save the King, you are not singing to Charles Windsor. You are singing about the personification of a nation.
Yeah.
He is the personification of a nation. When you sing God Save the King, you're singing about your country. If you're not proud to be British, why sing something else?
Why not sing something else? So you're staunchly...
Like Yellow Submarine or something, I don't know.
Well, one of the options is Wonderwall by Oasis.
Why Wonderwall? Yeah, well, why? You know, but certainly not. I'm not for anything other than God Save the King.
I won't get you to give us a rendition. Now, what I'm hoping for, if it's okay, because we've got a little bit of a crowd behind us here, haven't we? So I'm hoping we might be able to just come through. Whoa, I nearly went over a tent then. There you go. Now, okay, who do I go to first? Now, are you Anita's daughter, is that right?
Yes, I'm Anita's daughter.
Has she indoctrinated you with the royal bug, has she?
I think she has, yes, from a young age. I've grown up with that, and now the grandchildren are here as well.
So can you talk me through who we've got? Is that all right?
This is Sylvana. She's 4, Amalia, 10, and Anya.
And Anya. And are you all very excited to be here?
Yes.
Yes? And how long are you going to be here for, do you know?
We're not quite sure when we're going to be actually camping out, but we're definitely going to be here on the day.
You're going to be here on the day. Fantastic. And what are you most looking forward to?
Everything.
Everything? Oh, lovely. OK, now I'm just going to move over in this direction a little bit now and have a chat with this wonderful family here. Now, I was chatting to them a little bit beforehand, so we've already got to know each other quite well, but I'll let them introduce themselves. Hello, how are you? So you're mum, aren't you?
Yes, hello, how are you doing?
What's your name?
Anna.
Anna, and Anna, you're going to be not camping out, are you? But you're going to be very much here for the day.
This is a recce. We're coming back on Saturday morning, dawn chorus.
A dawn chorus. So why does it mean so much to you to be here?
It's an important part of history, and I think the Queen would have liked us all here to cheer on Charlie. And yeah, it's important to be here.
Absolutely. Now we've got a couple of absolute little diamonds here, haven't we? And I'm going to ask you, what's your name?
Arthur.
You're Arthur, are you? Now, Arthur, there's a reason why you and I don't get on about one thing, isn't that right? And I believe that we disagree massively on football. Who do you support?
Liverpool FC.
Liverpool FC. Well, I'm a Manchester United fan, so do you hate me now?
Don't know, not as much, but a bit.
Fantastic. Now, and yourself, what's your name?
Lucy.
Say that again for me.
Lucy.
Lucy, fantastic. Now, Lucy, are you really excited for the coronation?
Yes, really. I can't wait for the moment when Charles will be crowned. It will be a fantastic moment, and for history and for really lots.
And what do you think you're looking forward to most about this day then?
It will just be lovely to see the royal family, Kate, Prince George, William, Camilla, all of these royals I just love.
Absolutely. Now, do you mind me asking, how old are you?
7.
You're 7. Now, I don't know, but I've got a little feeling that your mum might be quite happy if you married Prince Louis. How would you feel about that?
That would be pressure as well, but I wouldn't. It would be harder with George, though.
It would be harder with George? Really? Why is that?
Because if George got crowned one day, I'd be queen.
Oh, you wouldn't want that?
No, it would be too much.
It would be far too much, would it? And would you like to be a prince one day, do you think?
No, I wouldn't, definitely.
Why not?
Oh, it's just too much fame and too much.
Play for Liverpool.
You'd rather play for Liverpool, would you?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now, can I have a little look at some of the tents that we've got set up here? Is that all right? So who's going to show me theirs? I'm going to bring Anita back in. Anita, you've got a fantastic jacket here that goes really, really well with your waistcoat, haven't you?
It does, yeah.
Do you want to talk me through some of the badges on this then?
Well, this is these badges here. There's one there. And there's one there.
Yeah.
And my granddaughters are homeschooled, and they do. They're given things to do to earn a badge, a little bit like the guides and the brownies and scouts. So they give me them, and I stitch them on. And this was made for us by a lovely lady called Lacey. And my good friend Sue made us this one.
Lovely. Well done, Sue.
Yeah,
well done,
she's
Sue.
clever.
Yeah, 100%. And there is a real sense of community here. I'm just going to try and bring everyone in a little bit if we can. Gather round, guys. So there's a real sense of community here, isn't there? And I believe that some of you didn't realise that you've got a couple of things in common. Is that right?
Yeah, we've made some friends today who are friends of friends, and yeah, we're having a lovely time. It's nice to get out and meet people on a sunny day and real community atmosphere. That's why we wanted to come down today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that I think has been, maybe dare I say it, lacking in modern society. I'm just going to come and if we can, just walk back a bit here, because I've got, thank you very much, everybody. I'll talk to you again a little bit, because we've got some other wonderful people just this way. God save the King, indeed. Yes, right. OK, follow me, people. Follow me, because I've got some other lovely people here. Now, I think we can get a little shot of this bear to start us off, shall we? I mean, that is absolutely magnificent. Now, I am going to whiz my way through here. You can see they've all been primed and ready to go. These two lovely ladies here. So let me in. Right. Hello. Hi. Right, so what are your names?
I'm Donna from Connecticut.
You're from Connecticut?
I am.
And have you come all the way for this?
Yes, I have. I can't wait. It's already begun. The excitement is on the mall.
Fantastic. I mean, this is great. So, and your name?
I'm Mary Jane Willows, and I come from Penzance in Cornwall.
Oh, good. So, and both of you were camping out as well, is that right?
We are, in the Green Palace.
Oh, in the Green Palace. Shall we get a little look at the Green Palace, shall we? It is, I think you might have the biggest tent on the Mall.
But there are 3 of us sleeping in it.
There are 3 of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Goodness
it's
me.
okay.
And I have to take credit. The pink tent, the princess tent, was mine, and I slept in that. But the little kids came, and I gave it to them.
Oh well, I think that's the right call. I think that's the right call, isn't it? So, why does this mean so much to you to be here for the coronation?
I've supported the monarchy ever since my parents taught me about it when I was a child, and they believed in the monarchy. I believe it's what's really special about Great Britain and the Commonwealth, and I want Prince Charles, now King Charles III, to know that we're here for him just as much as we were for his mother.
Absolutely. Now, I've got to ask you both again, same question I asked to the lovely Anita before, who I believe you're actually friends with. I think,
we met her at William's marriage.
Oh, there you
William
go.
and Catherine.
There's a massive royal community here, which is lovely. Now, I've got to ask you about the national anthem. Okay. I'll start with you. Now, of course, our national anthem isn't your national anthem, but you can adopt it. But how do you feel about God Save the King?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I mean, he is your monarch, and I think everybody should, should sing it. It's just like in the national anthem in the States when there's a baseball game. Everybody should stand, put their hand on their heart.
Yeah. Now, can I run a few of the options past you? Is that okay?
You can try.
The alternative options. Now, I don't think this is going to go particularly well. I don't know about you, but Rule Britannia.
I think it's a fabulous song, not for an anthem.
Not for an anthem, so it's a no to Rule Britannia.
It's a no.
It's a hard no. Okay. What about Land of Hope and Glory?
Love Land of Hope and Glory. Wave my flag. Not an anthem.
Not an anthem. We can't get a winner here, can we? We can't get a winner. Sweet Caroline.
Oh, please. You are joking.
No, they don't.
They do.
Well, they're not people that understand how special our royal family and the monarchy is. They can sing Sweet Caroline if they like when they go to their football match. We'll stick with God Save the King.
Yeah, okay, all right. And can I just ask you another one as well, and then I'll leave you to your fantastic business here. But Oasis, Wonderwall.
Oh, it's one of my favourite songs. Really, not an anthem.
Not a national anthem. I'm not sure that Noel and Liam Gallagher will be that happy about it as well. But I've just got to ask you as well, what are you guys surviving on? What's the food that you're eating?
Bars, crackers, yogurt, fruit.
Lots of water.
Yeah.
Lots of water.
And then last night we found some chips.
Oh, good stuff. So people can maybe come and give you a few supplies if they want.
Yeah, they do. People are always walking by
gluten and dairy-free, though.
Gluten and dairy-free. Well, our beggars can be choosers, but there we go. No, so,
and actually, Portugal did give us a bottle of champagne last year.
Really?
Portugal Press gave us a bottle of champagne.
I'm not sure the GBNews budget is going to stretch to that, I'm afraid.
A piece of cake.
But can I just ask you before we throw back, what would your message be to King Charles ahead of the coronation? You must be very nervous.
He must be nervous, but he's got nothing to be nervous about. We're here for him, we'll support him, and we'll give whatever help he needs.
All right, OK. Well, look, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for everyone who's been down there as well. And I think if I just come out and just give us a little shot now of what's going on here all around the place, it is so nice to see so many happy, smiley people here to celebrate the coronation. The flags are waving on the Mall. You absolutely love to see it. Patrick Christys at GB News. We are your coronation station.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, just about made it back from that jaunt across the road there. But hello and welcome to Buckingham Palace. And there are now just 3 days to go until the coronation of King Charles III. And the atmosphere, as you could tell, is really cranking up a notch. The sun is shining and everyone's in a great mood, in fine fettle, looking forward to a big, historic event. And rehearsals are continuing ahead of Saturday's big showpiece. And the good news is that one of the major figures involved says that it went very, very well. What wonderful shots they are of the rehearsal last night, and we'll be talking about all of that. And look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have loads coming your way. Me, Patrick Christys, right here on GB News. OK, ladies and gentlemen, well, there we go. It's going to be Patrick Christys here on GB News, and I will, of course, be bringing you all of that news, as well as some non-royal news as well, like, well, should we be banning smoking? How do we stop a problem like cold callers? And we've got a little bit of an insight into the catastrophically substandard accommodation that our military heroes are being forced to live in. So all of that, as well as, of course, the big royal topics with me, Patrick Christys, after your headlines, brought to you today by Polly.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed, and good afternoon to you. The top story on GB News today: Russia has accused Ukraine of trying to assassinate President Putin in an overnight drone attack. A video has emerged which appears to show the Kremlin being hit late last night. Moscow says 2 drones targeted President Putin's personal residence, but that they managed to thwart the attack, disabling the aircraft with electronic defences. Russia's parliament speaker has demanded the use of weapons that are capable of destroying what it described as the Kyiv terrorist regime. Ukraine denies any involvement and has sounded air alerts in the capital and other eastern regions. Here, 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security surrounding the King's coronation. The Met Police has confirmed the scale of the operation is bigger than it was for the Queen's funeral. The force has also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates, and then there was a controlled explosion after the suspect was asking to speak to a soldier before then telling officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. The Met's Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Ade Adelakan, says the incident was handled swiftly.
We got that incident under control extremely quickly.
So the male was detained within seconds. He was arrested within five minutes, so under control extremely quickly. We have debriefed this, and we're absolutely confident in our plans. And let me just reassure London that we are tried and tested at this. We're not doing this alone. We've reviewed our plans and are absolutely confident that we will deliver this in a manner that will be safe and secure for everyone that actually comes to London.
Now, Labour has criticised the government, accusing it of failing home buyers. That's after the English Housing Survey found only a third of children born in England this year will own a home by the time they reach their 50s if the current trends continue. During Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer suggested Rishi Sunak was out of touch with voters.
£9,000 would take 4 years. They think it's funny that 4 years for the average saver to save £9,000, or to put it a different way in terms the Prime Minister will understand, roughly the annual bill to heat his swimming pool. But for most people, 4 more years of scrimping is a hammer blow to their ambitions.
Well, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, responded by accusing the opposition of being at fault.
Let's talk about the Labour record on house building, Mr. Speaker. In London, the former Conservative mayor built 60,000 affordable homes in his first 5 years in office. How many did the current Labour mayor manage? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. In Wales, we need 12,000 new homes a year. How many have Labour built in the last year? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. As ever, Labour talk and the Conservatives deliver.
Well, staying with politics, and Downing Street says Partygate investigator Sue Gray's refusal to cooperate with a government probe into her move to a senior Labour role is obviously disappointing. Number 10 also denied claims that the Prime Minister could be pursuing a vendetta against the former senior official. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, has said it's up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the start date for her new role. Now, nurses in England are threatening the return to the picket line despite a new pay deal being agreed for the majority of NHS staff. In a letter to the Health Secretary, the Royal College of Nursing said there'll be another ballot this month for further strike action to be held between June and December. ICU nurse Kelly Hopkins told us the government doesn't understand how difficult it is to work in her sector.
Just not prepared to listen to what we're saying. Conditions in A&E are horrendous. I did a shift last Saturday and I was nursing really sick patients on corridors. They've been there for days. How can you wash somebody? How can you give them the care that they deserve when you're on a corridor nursing somebody whose life is potentially at risk? And I just think they're out of touch. They just need to come down and see what it's like.
More than 7 million households will receive a £301 cost of living payment by the end of today. The money is part of a package of government support to help struggling households. A further £300 will be made available to eligible families by the autumn, and a similar payment will then be made in spring next year. Royal Mail has unveiled 4 specially decorated post boxes to mark the King's coronation. The boxes, sited in London, Edinburgh, Cardiff and at Hillsborough, showcase the occasion's official coronation emblem. The Westminster Post Box is situated close to Westminster Abbey, where the coronation itself will take place on Saturday. And ahead of the coronation, 3 dresses, once owned by Diana, Princess of Wales, will go on display at the Museum of Style Icons in Ireland before they're auctioned off. The outfits will officially go under the hammer in LA in August. They're expected to sell for between £280,000 and £550,000. You with GB News. More news as it happens now. Back to Patrick at Buckingham Palace.
Welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here at Buckingham Palace for GB News, but I am going to start this particular hour on that dramatic news coming from Russia. Let's see if we've got any developments, shall we? The government there claims that the Kremlin has come under attack from a Ukrainian drone, or indeed drones, actually. They are describing it as an assassination attempt on President Putin. For what it's worth, the Ukrainians, last time I spoke to Mark anyway, were denying this. Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, has more on this from our Paddington studio. Mark, what's going on?
Well, this is certainly, on the face of it, a serious escalation. And it doesn't actually matter what the Ukrainian government says, and we should say they are denying any involvement in this incident over the Kremlin last night. The Russian government is asserting that these drones were a deliberate attempt to assassinate the president of Russia and to attack Russia itself. The footage, as is understandable, is being shown all over Russian television at the moment. We've had the Speaker of the House in Moscow calling for all weapons, all capable weapons, to be used against Ukraine now to end what they call a terrorist regime. In fact, a spokesman for the Russian government has also said it reserves the right to take retaliatory measures wherever and whenever is deemed necessary. So, as I say, it really doesn't matter whether Ukraine protests its innocence here. Russia will use this as a pretext if it wants to launch even more deadly attacks against the Ukrainian capital. The Americans, Patrick, for their part, we've heard from the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, in the last hour. He said that they're still trying to verify these reports, but also added that you have to take whatever Moscow says with a huge shaker of salt.
No, indeed, Mark. And I think a lot of people will be holding their breath, actually, now, won't they, to see how the Kremlin responds to this, how Putin responds to this, whether or not they will just use this as an opportunity, really, to just launch everything they've got at Ukraine. And that will be the concern going forward. Mark, as I understand it, we might very shortly anyway, we might actually be hearing some stuff from Volodymyr Zelensky. But just to reiterate, you were saying that the Ukrainians are denying any involvement in this, aren't they?
Yeah, they say absolutely they have had no involvement in what Russia say was a deliberate attempt by 2 drones last night to attack the official residence of Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin itself. As I say, the footage shows at least one of these drones being blown up in the sky just over one of the domes at the Kremlin. Another angle of that same footage shows the dome building itself on fire. It's dramatic footage. It has got many people in Russia, understandably, I guess, from the general population, quite agitated. Many of the usual suspects on the political scene, of course, in Russia, calling for very significant retaliation. Now, this is important because if you remember, Patrick, at the outbreak of the Ukrainian war, the invasion by Russia of Ukraine, there were all of these reports about President Zelensky being a key target for the Kremlin. Reports that the Wagner group of mercenaries had made their way into the capital, Kiev, and were actively looking to assassinate President Zelensky. Since then, those reports have kind of died away, and we've seen Western leaders increasingly going off to Ukraine and doing walkabouts in Kiev itself without incident. That now will have to be reassessed in the hours, weeks and months ahead, depending how Russia decides it wants to deal with what it claims is an attempt on the life of Vladimir Putin.
OK. All right. Look, Mark, thank you very, very much. Mark White here for GBNews. We're playing you some images now that I can see of what was Volodymyr Zelensky speaking a bit earlier on. He's not speaking anymore. We'll dip in and out of that, ladies and gents, and I'm absolutely certain that our team will be clipping the best bits of that for you And we'll play that for you throughout the course of the show. So it'll be fascinating to hear what Volodymyr Zelensky had to say. I'll get that to you in just a matter of moments. Don't worry about that. But we will have more on that developing story throughout the course of the day. But, of course, let's now look ahead to Saturday's Coronation. And we start with calls to replace the national anthem, believe it or not. And God Save the King has been sung since the 18th century, although our previous royal commentator, Rafael Mancu, said it dated back to the 17th century, so I was fact-checked live on air. But a poll says that it's now unpopular with a significant number of people, with 1/3 of those asked by a poll in the Times saying that it should be ditched. Here at GB News, we of course love the national anthem. We play it every single morning on our breakfast show, of course we do. So, here's a little reminder of how rousing it can sound in all its resplendent glory, and this is from the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph last November. Well, there we go. OK, so I'm joined now by David Starkey, historian, broadcaster, fan favourite. David, what do you make of this nonsense that we should change our national anthem?
I can see the point.
Oh, David.
Let me explain. Let's put the plus side. Let's put why we should keep it. It is, I don't know whether Rafe said this, it is the oldest national anthem in the world. We pioneer this as we pioneer everything else. Haydn writes the famous Austria directly as a copy of God Save the King for the Holy Roman Emperor, for the Austrian Emperor. It's also, and again, we should spell this out, it's not a kind of rumpety-tumpety-tump, it's a prayer. Yeah. God Save the King.
Yes.
And therefore it sounds a bit like a psalm setting. I mean, think it's like the old hundredth, you know, all people that on earth. It comes from that kind of body. On the other hand, it is not the most rousing noise in the world.
No, it's not.
And I think this is why people are reacting. It's also, let's put another plus. It makes very clear that what we're doing is elevating the king, not some notion of nationalism.
Yes.
You see, and this seems to me to be actually a very, very good thing. That the tendency with national anthems is, well, they are what they say. So you get. I mean, do you actually know some of the words?
No, I
was asking a different one. The words of the French national anthem.
Oh, good. No, I don't.
Right. Okay. The words of the French national anthem include, "Let the blood of the impure soak our furrows." I mean, in other words, it's a violent, brutal, revolutionary song.
Yeah.
What ours is this kind of dignified statement, and also elevating the king as the representative figure. Now, again, a lot of people are clearly uncomfortable with that. They want the sort of thing that you get in Scotland or Wales or Ireland, which is a kind of local national song. But then, what would be the one for the whole of the British Isles? You see, all the things that are obvious. Jerusalem, that's about England, completely. Land of hope and glory. Well, I'm afraid it's empire. And we can't. Well, I'd love to. And it's a great. Even more so.
Yes.
Even slaves come into it, so you know it's cancelled instantly. They're all great tunes, but I think what we have works. It suits us. You were talking about last night, when everybody here in the studio they weren't bombs. They were controlled explosions by uncontrolled police going on, and everybody just continued totally calmly. And I think our rather cool, dignified, not getting too excited national anthem, in that sense, is perfect.
Lovely.
For that.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to hit you with some alternatives as well, not just ones that we mentioned there.
Wet fish.
So I went out and about a little bit earlier on, and I was speaking to some wonderful people about what they thought about our national anthem as it is, what they thought about the people who want it changed, and also what they thought about some of the possible alternatives. Let's play it.
No. Yeah! We've got to keep the national anthem. Yes, definitely.
So you wouldn't...
We've had it for years and years. We don't want any change.
You wouldn't want Wonderwall by Oasis, then?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
So why do you think we need to keep our national anthem?
Because it's history. It's been around for years and years, so why change it?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. Sorry. No, I'm a traditionalist and God save the King and, yeah, no, not having any of that.
And I'll give you a couple of options that they want to change it to.
Okay.
Rule Britannia.
I like Rule Britannia, but I'm sorry, our anthem's our anthem and I'm not changing it.
You're going to be absolutely dead against Wonderwall by Oasis then, aren't you?
Yes, but I do like Oasis, but no, I don't want that either. Okay. No, we keep what we got.
I love our national anthem. When I sing the national anthem, it comes from here. I sing it with pride. I sing it with immense meaning, immense feeling. My father taught me the national anthem. As a girl guide, I had to learn all the verses. How many children? Don't ask me to sing them now, it's many years ago.
I won't ask you to sing it, but what I will say is you learnt that as a child, but it's the younger generation now who are most opposed to the national anthem.
But then they've not been taught what its meaning is. They've not been taught the importance of it. And maybe it's about education and love and passion and understanding what the...
Well, there we go. OK, so no dice for Wonderwall, I'm afraid. I'm sure Liam and Noel Gallagher will be absolutely gutted. Sweet Caroline, no, that's out as well. And I'm sure David Starkey would object to both of those things. But how do you react to this, David, just quickly before we move on to our security issues that was plaguing us last night? But the idea that it's the younger generation, around 42% of them, they're Generation Z. They are the most opposed to our current national anthem.
They're most opposed to everything, aren't they? And above all, they're most opposed to the nation. They'll grow out of it. They'll grow up, like you know.
I am clearly the
the representative figure.
The representative of all things grown up. People will be shouting at their TV screens now. Look, David, thank you. David's going to be joining me throughout the course of this show, but I do want to talk about the security operation for the coronation, and it's going to be even bigger than that carried out for our late Queen's funeral. Now, you may notice behind me there are fewer people today. In fact, there shouldn't really be any apart from police and security staff. Yesterday, that was lined with people. The police have really tightened it up here, and they've confirmed that there's going to be 29,000 officers on duty in the lead-up to Saturday and over the bank holiday weekend as well. It, of course, does come after a very dramatic incident last night when a man was arrested, and GBNews viewers online and on TV will be able to see that footage now of a man being arrested by police, led away from the gates of Buckingham Palace after what is believed to be shotgun cartridges were thrown into the grounds of the palace. Now, he's being held on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon after a knife was also recovered from the scene. The matter is not being treated as terror-related. And ahead of the coronation as well, police have been given extra powers to stop protests like the one staged by groups like Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion and Animal Rising in recent months. Anti-monarchists claim that they've been sent what they called an intimidatory letter to tell them about the new legislation, which was given royal assent by the King yesterday. And we're going to be talking about some of this new legislation as well and what it means. With me now is the former Deputy Assistant Commissioner for the Met Police. It's Andy Trotter. Andy, thank you very much for joining us. Look, great to have you on the show. I'm just going to run through a couple of bits and bobs. So it's the Public Order Act. It received royal assent yesterday, and up to 12 months in prison and an unlimited fine for protesters who block roads. A new offence of interfering with key national infrastructure, such as oil refineries, airports, railways, up to 6 months in prison, or an unlimited fine for anyone who locks themselves onto other people, objects or buildings. And just one more for you as well. Officers will also be able to search protesters for padlocks, glue and digging tools, with people intending to use them to cause disruption also facing criminal charges. Andy, good thing in your view or not?
Well, I think, the government's trying to balance the rights of the demonstrators with the balance of the rights of the ordinary public going about their business. And we've seen what a challenge it's been for the police in recent weeks and months of looking after the demonstrators, letting them do what they want to do, whilst at the same time keeping traffic flowing and letting people go about their business. So it's a difficult one. We have the right of demonstration in this country, and it's a fiercely regarded and protected right. But equally, a lot of people are getting fed up about being stopped from going to work, going to schools, going to hospitals, etc. And the police have been subject to a lot of criticism over this as well. It's been very tough for them under existing legislation. This may go some way to assisting them.
Yeah, and it's important to say that we're talking about this in the context of the coronation, but actually this will just rumble on. So it means that at other events, and Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion or whatever these groups are planning on doing later this summer and in the coming years, it sounds to me, Andy, that the police will have more powers to be able to intervene and act quicker and give them tougher sentences, which I really think is what the vast majority of the public want.
Yeah, the sentences are one thing. I think what people get frustrated about is seeing what they see as the police not doing anything. They see the police, not intervening straight away as they would, for example, if a few drunks were blocking the road on a Saturday night. The legislation has not helped so far. The cases that have gone through to the Supreme Court haven't helped the police so far. They're trying to act within the law right now. They don't want to exceed the law. And I think these changes will go some way to assisting them in that. I don't think the police will change the fact that they facilitate demonstrations, which they do every weekend, everywhere all over the country. But it will give them rather more power to deal with people who persistently come back, block the roads, cause difficulty for everybody else. Because the punishments so far and the powers so far have not been helpful.
No, exactly. Look, Andy, thank you very, very much. It's been great to have you on the show. That's Andy Trotter there, who's a former big cheese at the Met. And it is in light of what we saw last night here at our Coronation Station, if you want to call it that, really, where there was a controlled explosion that took place. And I do urge you all, by the way, to go online, go on Twitter. We'll play it later on in the show of Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Cole just being incredibly British about the whole thing. Jacob Rees-Mogg in a double-breasted jacket there, and Michael Cole refusing to really move and being told, well, the explosion has gone off now, do we have to really go anywhere? And I just thought it was unflappable British behaviour at its very, very best, if you ask me. But there we go. But let's not forget about another huge event. In fact, it's so big, it's huge, isn't it? It's coming to your screens very, very soon. The one and only Nigel Farage's interview with the one and only 45th US President. It's Donald Trump. And that will air tonight, only on GB News, and it will be at 7 p.m. So that is tonight, 7 p.m. You'll only be able to get it on GB News, and it is Nigel Farage and Donald Trump. Let me tell you, you do not want to miss that. I've been... my sources tell me that there's some rather explosive content in that and that it'll be well worth watching. Now, moving on though, food inflation is still out of control. A tin of baked beans is up by 39% in the last 12 months, believe it or not. I've got a theory on this. I'm going to be talking to Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. I think companies now are shamelessly profiteering, and actually they are punishing you. They are punishing you when you need all of the help that you can get. What on earth is going on? Are they blaming Brexit? They're hiding behind all sorts of stuff. In reality, I think they're deliberately hiking their prices up. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, OK, well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is Patrick Christys here at Buckingham Palace for you, where I will be all week. And we've been talking a lot about whether or not we should change the national anthem. We've been talking a lot as well about the big security detail that is now ramping up after last night's incident. And we'll bring you the latest on all of that. As well, in other news, there's been a drone attack on the Kremlin. Russia are calling it an assassination attempt on President Putin by the Ukrainian regime. There are calls there for massive retaliation. As yet, the Ukrainians are denying it all. I think we're going to hear from Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, shortly. But I think the world is really holding its breath when it comes to this, because that could be the excuse that Russia needs to, well, whisper it quietly, go nuclear. But we all hope not, of course, don't we? I've got loads of other stuff coming up for you as well. Like I said, it's not just royals and Russia. I'm going to be talking about how we stop cold callers, because they are the bane of people's existence. Fraud costs us hundreds of millions of pounds a year. They always target the elderly. They always target the vulnerable. We'll be giving you some top tips on how we can ban cold callers. The government is bringing in a new charter to try to be able to do that. George Osborne wants to make your cigarettes illegal if you smoke. Maybe you think it's a good thing. Maybe you hate the smell of cigarette smoke, but we've already banned it from inside pubs, haven't we? We've already banned it from loads of places. And actually, do you want to live in a country where the government can just reach into your lives and ban things willy-nilly, even if you don't particularly like them? For what it's worth, he's also dead against orange juice, so he's gone full spectrum there. I have seen pictures of George Osborne smoking, so it seems a bit hypocritical if you ask me. So we're going to be talking about all of that. And what else have I got? Well, the migrant barge, you know, that long-awaited migrant barge is going to be somewhere off the coast of Dorset, or wherever the heck they decide to put it now. That's due to arrive very soon. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know about you. People will be able to see pictures of it there, the Bibby Stockholm. But I've got a worrying story in light of that accommodation that we're seeing there, in light of that accommodation for asylum seekers, migrants, illegal immigrants, whatever you want to call them. I've got some information that I think will shock you and possibly anger you as well, that is being provided to our armed forces. We've reported a lot about veterans issues, so people who've left the forces not being given adequate mental health care and housing. But the people who are currently in the armed forces are being, in my view, badly let down as well. In fact, it's so bad that some barracks apparently are at risk of imminent collapse because they've been so poorly made. Why on earth are we making the people who defend Queen, King and country go and live in that accommodation? And of course, yes, I will be out and about, meeting more of the crowds of people who are already lining the streets here. We got a good look at some of them before, didn't we? So yes, I'll be doing my bit to speak to them and build up this sense of atmosphere ahead of the coronation. But right now, it is your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon to you. The top stories this hour. Russia has accused Ukraine of trying to assassinate President Putin in an overnight drone attack. A video appears to show the Kremlin being hit late last night. Moscow says 2 drones targeted President Putin's residence, but they managed to thwart the attack, disabling the aircraft with electronic defences. Russia's parliament speaker has demanded the use of weapons that are capable of destroying what it described as the Kiev terrorist regime. Ukraine, for its part, denies any involvement and has sounded air alerts in the capital and other eastern regions. Here, 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security surrounding the King's coronation. The Met Police has confirmed the scale of the operation is bigger than it was for the Queen's funeral. The force also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates and there was a controlled explosion after the suspect told officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. Downing Street says Partygate investigator Sue Gray's refusal to cooperate with a government probe into her move to a senior Labour role is obviously disappointing. Number 10's also denied accusations the PM is pursuing a vendetta against Sue Gray. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, says it's up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the start date for her new role. More than 7 million households will receive a £301 cost of living payment by the end of today. The money's part of a package of government support to help struggling households. A further £300 will be available for eligible families in the autumn, and a similar payment will be made in spring next year. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys at the Palace. Now, a story which caught my eye today is that a giant barge fitted out to house migrants is due to arrive in the UK this week. It's a long-awaited barge, let's be honest. And the Times reports that the vessel is expected to accommodate somewhere in the region of 500 male illegal migrants at Portland Port as part of the government's plan to deal with the Channel boat arrivals. And, I mean, look, so there we go. That's going to be there. It's caused huge controversy in the local area, and I think a lot of people, of course, do find it very controversial, and indeed many areas who were proposed to have similar barges are up in arms about it, and they say that they don't really want it. But that's one type of accommodation. But the Times is also reporting that the Ministry of Defence is conducting urgent surveys of its estate, so its military estate. This is where people in the military live currently, amid concerns that the roofs of hundreds of barracks and training facilities may be at risk of collapse. And it's feared that material cheaper than concrete was used for construction in the 50s and the 90s, especially in the public sector. So actually, if you really look at this, it isn't just military accommodation, hospitals and schools as well. There is also concern over dozens, like I've said, of those schools and indeed hospitals. With me now is the military expert, and of course is joining me now to give his thoughts on all of this. It is Chip Chapman. Chip, look, thank you very much for joining me, Chip. What do you make of the state of our military accommodation? Because, you know, you are former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, aren't you, Chip? And this must be a damning indictment to people like you.
Well, it's not necessarily a damning indictment of me, but we know that there is a problem. You've seen the best of the army, and that's why you're there. You know, it's the bit about the pageantry, the pride and the pomp. And we saw the best in operations with Sudan. But the reality is that last year, 39,000 of those who were in service accommodation paid the minimal charge. That's grade 4, and grade 1 is the highest. And 4,360 paid no charge because the accommodation wasn't good enough at all. Now, obviously, there are large building programs, and there's been one since 2006, the Project Allenby Connaught. But like all these things, there were legacy problems. It doesn't excuse it. And the problem is that recruiting and retaining people is part of the accommodation is part of that recruiting and retaining people. And we're not doing that because the outflow is greater than the inflow at the moment. And we know from the satisfaction ratings, both for those in married quarters, those who are married, and those in single accommodation, it's very low with the state of the maintenance.
Well, the fact is that the pay isn't particularly great, lower down in the armed forces, is it? And then you've got accommodation for relatives and friends and families they've got rising damp, they've got catastrophically awful situations there. There's also believed to be something like parasites in the water. I've reported on all of this. I mean, it's literally unlivable. It's literally unlivable. And then we've got barracks and training facilities that are apparently at risk of imminent collapse. And yet at the same time, our government feels perfectly content to renovate disused barracks so that people who arrived here illegally can live in them.
Well, they're two different budgets. One's the Home Office budget and one's the Defence budget, so you can't link the two together. And the cost drivers in Defence are pay, pensions, fuel costs and Category A equipment programmes, those over 400 million. But those which are catastrophic, and you've mentioned some of them in your piece there just now, Patrick, are things that we need to get to grip with, because all the things that you see in the Continuous Attitude Survey, and the last one was published in May 22, are all those things that you touched on. People are dissatisfied with pay, their work-life balance, the allowances, pay, pensions, their accommodation. So there's a sort of whole catalyst of things which are really, really cheesing people off in the armed forces at the moment. They like the stuff they do in terms of supporting the Coronation. They absolutely love going on operations with Sudan, but you won't retain them if you have bad accommodation, which we're not doing anything about.
Do you not think that it's actually a visible sign of decline, though, Chip, that we have our armed forces who we are sending out to fight and in some cases die or suffer catastrophic injuries at the behest of our government and at the behest of technically the royal family as well, and then we are asking them to live and train in buildings that, according to reports, might collapse at any moment?
Yeah, of course it's a sign of decline, and it's only when the catastrophic things happen that it hits the press. One of the things which contributes to this, in my opinion, is that we sold off the Married Quarters estate in 1996 and then leased it back, and there's lost money there for the, for example, the National Audit Office said that we've lost between £2 and £4 billion, which could have been reinvested by that decision. And the people we sold it to are actually now part of a private equity firm, and the government wanted to take the real estate back into MOD control in 2022. Haven't been able to do that at the moment because they think they'll lose a court case with a private equity firm and would be even more billions out of pocket from that decision.
Yeah, I just find it absolutely shocking. I take it, Chip, that you would urge the government to get to grips with all of this. I mean, again, you know, if you ask the British public about the stuff that they really don't particularly want to pay for, right, I would really expect and anticipate that this is something that they really wouldn't mind taxpayers paying for, so that the people who we are training to go to the next conflict zone or keep us safe or keep our king safe at the Coronation, which we will of course be broadcasting live here on Saturday, that those people don't have to lie in a bed at night and look up at the ceiling above them and wonder whether or not it's about to come down on top of them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and the Defence Infrastructure Organisation have to conduct that and ameliorate the situation behind that. But it's worth saying we're just not very good at managing money. This week it was shown by the Swedish Peace Institute that the 6th top military spender in the world is the UK Armed Forces. We need to do better with how we spend the money in an efficient way, and we've not been doing that well, both in accommodation and equipment procurement in the last 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Chip, thank you very much. As former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Chip Chapman there, just responding to those reports that came through, very concerning reports that we have seen, haven't we, that there are disused military barracks which are indeed now being renovated and used for people who've come illegally across the Channel. We've got a boat in Dorset that's going to be used, a barge there. Now, that is the Home Office budget, and it is an important distinction that Chip Chapman made there, but that just shows how nimble and quickly we can move to renovate things and get suitable accommodation sorted, doesn't it? And then the flip side of it is that you have military wives and children living in accommodation with water pouring through the ceilings and, you know, rotting carpets, and they can't have, you know, toilets and baths and all of this stuff. In fact, they're also being told there might be parasites in some of the water. I mean, that is absolutely shocking. But then the people in the military themselves, the ones at their barracks and the ones who are in training facilities, now have to look up and wonder whether or not that ceiling is going to cave in on them. And it isn't just there as well. It's schools and it is hospitals as well. I just feel as though something has gone catastrophically wrong there. gbviews@gbnews.uk is, of course, that email address. I want to hear from you, and hopefully we'll get to a couple of the emails very, very shortly. But I'm joined by David Starkey, and I will be throughout the course of this show. David Starkey, royal historian and fan favourites here at GB News. And David, you were chuttering away a little bit about a story that we were going to touch on earlier, and I do want to talk about this because it appears that food prices are being drastically inflated by the suppliers, by the actual shops themselves, and they are essentially charging people a lot more money than they need to be, and they're blaming the war in Ukraine, and they're blaming Brexit, and actually I'm not sure that there is much need to do that, and they're shamelessly profiteering. Some would say shamelessly profiteering at a time when ordinary people need well, not to have drastic levels of food inflation. A tin of baked beans has gone up by 35%, for goodness sake. And I know you had some views on all of that.
I think the real problem is that our money supply has been mismanaged. Fundamentally, inflation is about too much money chasing too few goods. That's what's happened. We had, remember, this extraordinary period of virtually zero interest rates. That's the problem of the management of the Bank of England. Again, I'm sorry, look back at COVID. What happened with COVID? Nobody did anything. The economy shuttered down. At the same time, vast amounts of money were pumped into it through furlough. Now, all of that eventually comes through. I'm sorry. I think what we should be talking about aren't these short-term issues. We should be really asking the fundamental question, has the independence of the Bank of England and of the Federal Reserve, because it's exactly the same in America. In other words, we are seeing very widespread inflation throughout the West. This is not specific to Britain. It's not because of supermarkets in America or France or Germany. Exactly the same phenomenon is happening in the euro. It's because our central banks have mismanaged the money supply. And that we need to be asking these big fundamental questions. It's so easy just to say, oh, let's blame a supermarket. Let's say, and it's wrong. It's wrong again to blame BP. We're dealing with fundamental questions, but none of us like talking about them. They're big, they're difficult. It's easy to say, oh, isn't Sainsbury's bad? Isn't BP bad?
I do get that, and I do think, though, as well, by the same token, though, David, a lot of these companies, if they are shamelessly profiteering, can hide behind the fact that most people will not look at the bigger picture. Most people will just swallow the excuse of, well, this is to do with Brexit, or have you seen what's happening in Ukraine? This is why we've got to raise our prices. And so they get away with it.
I think generally you will find that all of these companies are dealing with really genuine pressures. They are dealing with pressures actually in terms of supply. Why? One of the other reasons, of course, is we've gone for net zero. We are deliberately inflating fuel costs. Don't we all understand this? Isn't it wonderful that we have wind generation of power? It's about the least efficient method of generating power you can think of. We deliberately decided we don't want to heat our homes efficiently with gas. We want instead to have extraordinarily elaborate new installations like heat pumps. We constantly will contradictories. We have politicians that will contradictories. Nobody bothers, I'm sorry, my theme tune, to go back to fundamentals. And if you think this is a problem now, wait for the next 5 years. Wait once there is the really serious shift to renewables. The costs are vast.
And there's a lot of people making a lot of money out of this. Everyone does think that a lot of the groups behind a lot of these net zero agendas are all these lovely, fluffy people who care deeply about our environment. And no doubt some of them are. But there's a lot of people out there, David, who just see a quick buck, and in fact to the tunes of billions.
Well, but because the government is throwing vast amounts of your money and my money in subsidies. I mean, so the renewables are only viable because of vast subsidies. The reason that in Britain, for example, electricity prices are so high is because they're bearing the cost of renewables. In other words, what you're doing is you're shifting money straight from the pocket of an old age pensioner or whatever into a company that's making a fortune out of building wind farms.
Absolutely.
And by the way, most of the wind farms come from China. Sorry.
No, this is it. I mean, I love dipping into your infinite pool of wisdom, David Starkey. Thank you very, very much. He'll be with me throughout the course of this show. I just want to run past you a couple of the other bits and bobs I've got. Nigel Farage, the man himself, is possibly actually currently now interviewing former President Donald Trump, and we're going to be teasing ahead to that. I'm hoping, hopefully we might get a little sneak preview of that, and also we might be able to talk to Nigel himself, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for all of that. I'm going to be talking about how we stop cold callers. They're the bane of a lot of people's existence. They're absolute scumbags in my view. They call and prey on the elderly and the vulnerable, and then they decide that they're going to rip you off for all you're worth. How do we stop that? The government is stepping in for all of that, but of course I am having a wonderful time here at Buckingham Palace, and one of the highlights of this whole week has been speaking to the royal superfans who are camping out on the Mall, and in just a few minutes' time I'm going to rip my headset off and I'm going to leg it over there, and yes, I can see the cameraman's all ready to go, and I'm going to be talking to them. I believe we might have a little shot of what happened when I met a young boy earlier on the Mall who was telling me all about what he's looking forward to here, so let's play that and I'll leg it. That we disagree massively on football. Who do you support?
Liverpool
FC. Liverpool FC. Well, I'm a Manchester United fan, so do you hate me now?
Don't know, not as much, but a bit.
Fantastic.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain's news.
When I was a boy, you could walk up to
Yes,
the door
well,
of
welcome back,
banks.
everybody. I have just about made it back from the studios, back over to the Mall here, and I'm here to meet some of the wonderful people who are building up for this coronation. You can see that the atmosphere is building. Everyone's here getting involved. Right, so who have we got over here? Shall we head to this wonderfully dressed chap, shall we? Hello, what's your name?
Hello, my name's Bartley, and originally I'm from County Durham. I've been in London now for a number of years, and of course it is coronation time, and we can't forget the one woman that does it all and did it all. Our jolly old queen. May she rest in peace.
Absolutely, and I see though that you've got a near enough life-size cardboard cutout here. I think, where on earth did you get this from?
Well, I purchased it.
Yes, I hope so. You know we didn't nick it. Go on, whereabouts from?
Well, you'd be surprised. I shouldn't even laugh about that, but I purchased it from a very popular fancy dress shop in Shepherd's Bush.
Fantastic. Now, I've got to ask a little bit about this outfit before we move on and talk to some other wonderful people who are out and about here today. I mean, is this tailor-made?
No, this is a cheap and nasty version of the internet. The tailor-made one is from DeBell, and they were very, very good at what they did. However, I lost it whilst I'd had one too many.
Oh, well, there you go. Hey, I think we can all relate to losing something that we care deeply about after you've had one too many, can't we? So, one final one with you then. So you are presumably just really looking forward to it. What are you looking forward to most, do you think, then?
Particularly seeing Lady Camilla wearing that crown.
Oh, lovely.
Because I'm a huge, huge fan of Lady Camilla.
Oh, bless you. All right, well, let's just move it on a little bit down the line. Now, I believe I've got a wonderful lady here. And so what's your name? Where have you come from?
Linda. I'm from Watton-at-Stone in Hertford.
Fantastic. And are you camping out? What are you doing?
I am, yes. I'm camping out just down there. Got here a little while ago. So, yeah, made lots of friends already.
And how are you finding it?
Yeah, great. The atmosphere's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And what are you most looking forward to then?
Just being part of the vibe and just enjoying meeting new people.
And why is it so important to you to go to so much effort to come here and be a part of this wonderful celebration?
Well, my son really wanted to come. He's only 5, so he's a bit too young. So he's made a banner with a picture that he's drawn of the king, and so he wanted to be able to see that on the news on the day. So that's why I've come.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I think if it's all right with our cameraman here, if we're just going to do a little bit of a walk down and give people a flavour. Just tuning in here of all of the tents that are here. So we've got loads of people already camping out. We've got some flags on display as well, and people really are going to huge amounts of effort, aren't they? And I'm just going to try and ambush people. This could go horribly wrong, but we'll see, because we don't know we're coming actually. Can I have a quick chat with you? Is that all right? Now, we are live, so please don't swear. I sound like Davina McCall, don't I? How are you?
I'm good.
You're good. Now, what's your name? Where have you come from?
Faith Nicholson.
Faith Nicholson. Where have you come from?
I've come from Hawthorne.
Okay, all right. But now this is a wonderful little royal poncho here, a Union Jack poncho that you've got on. So, is this your tent then?
Yes, this is my tent. I've been here since Monday.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Look, I've got to ask the obvious question. Okay. How are you? Washing and eating and all of this stuff. I've got to ask. I've got to ask.
Okay, so there are toilets.
Yeah.
And we can wash there.
Okay, fantastic. And so you're going to be here for the main event itself. Well, why is it so special for you to be here?
Okay, so I've been following the royal events since Charles and Diana got married, and so I've followed him quite closely, and this is the icing on the cake for me.
Oh, absolutely. Let's just keep wandering down, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Now, people who were looking at us in the last hour will recognise these two lovely ladies here with this fabulous hat that we've got. I'm going to keep on coming, because the tent, and it is a real family experience, really. I mean, people are bringing their kids, they're bringing their grandchildren, and everyone's being a part of it. We've got a load of people here as well who are just tourists coming down for the day, etc. I've got some wonderful characters here that I'm going to bring around, and we've got a fabulous cardboard of Her Late Majesty the Queen with "That's My Boy" on it ahead of the coronation. I'm going to see if I can speak to just a couple of other people as well. Why not? Can I have a quick chat with you? Is that all right? Yes, fantastic. Come on down. So what's your name? Cara. And you're here for the coronation, I take it as well. You are one of the people. Are you going to be camping out as well? And why do you feel so passionately about it?
I just do. I mean, I went to the Queen's funeral.
Yeah.
And then obviously that was 70 years on that.
Yeah.
And I just want to see.
And this is a much happier time, isn't it, I think? And what do you make of everyone who's been gathered around and people who are really getting involved? It just seems like there's such a big, almost family atmosphere.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Absolutely.
I mean, this lady here, we met up for the Queen's funeral, and we were out here for 5 days last time.
Wow.
And yeah, we've come back again.
Do you think King Charles is going to do a good job?
Yeah.
Why?
I just think he is.
Yeah?
He takes after his mum.
Oh, he's been training his whole life for it, hasn't it? Right, we'll work our way back round, I think. So here we go. No, thank you very much. It's lovely to chat to you. Here are some of the people I was speaking to a little bit earlier on. Now, you can hear, I think, in the background there, can't you, of the tannoy of people desperately trying to funnel the crowd through. Massive security operation, it must be said. That security operation has stepped up big time since that incident last night. Jacob Rees-Mogg was live on air with Michael Cole. They were obviously on air as there was that controlled explosion at Buckingham Palace. So what we're seeing is people funneling in all of here, and I just think this is absolutely wonderful, kind of unashamed display of patriotism and loveliness and happiness, and people all just out and about enjoying themselves, really, as we build up to the coronation. Look, I'll do a little bit more of this. I absolutely love the chaos. Patrick Christys on GBNews.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to Buckingham Palace, and there are of course just 3 days to go now until the coronation of King Charles III, and the atmosphere is really cracking up a notch, as you could tell from the people I was just interviewing there and the people the previous hour as well. I absolutely love it here. The sun is shining and everyone is in a great mood, and we're looking forward, aren't we, to a historic event, a historic moment in British history. And rehearsals are continuing ahead of Saturday's big showpiece event, the coronation itself. The good news is that one of the major figures involved says, we have it on good authority, that they're going very, very well. Now, welcome back. I promise you it won't just all be royal news this hour. We are talking about a lot of other stuff as well, including, hopefully, fingers crossed, a little sneak preview of Nigel Farage's big interview with President Donald Trump, which will air tonight at 7 p.m. It's only going to be on GB News, so make sure that you look out for that. Fingers crossed we get a little snippet of that, but from what I've heard, it's explosive. Frankly, it's everything that you would expect, so make sure you keep your eyes and ears peeled there. We're also going to be talking about cold callers. They are the bane of most people's existence. They prey on the elderly. They're scumbags, if you ask me, and the government now is going to step in and do what they can to clamp down on cold callers. I am, of course, as well, also going to be talking about rather a lot of stuff. Should we be changing the national anthem, do you think? A third of people apparently want us to change it. How does Wonderwall by Oasis or Sweet Caroline sound to you? No, I didn't think so either. So we've got all of that coming your way, and increased police powers ahead of this event as well after last night's major security incident. But now it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. The main news stories at 5 o'clock on GB News. And we start with some breaking news that Donald Trump, the former US president, has told GB News he believes Meghan Markle treated the late Queen with disrespect. In an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage, he gave his take on the King's coronation.
I think it's going to be a great day, and I think that they will do a great job.
Yeah.
And he loves the country. Really, I got to know him quite well, and he loves the country, really loves the country, and he loved his mother. And that's why I thought she was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
Well, you can see that full world-exclusive interview with Donald Trump tonight on Farage at 7 o'clock. Meanwhile, 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security surrounding the King's coronation this Saturday. The Metropolitan Police has confirmed the scale of the operation is bigger than it was for the Queen's funeral. The force also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates, and there was a controlled explosion after he asked to speak to a soldier before telling officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. The Met's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Ade Adelakan says the incident was handled swiftly.
We got that incident under control extremely quickly. So the male was detained within seconds. He was arrested within five minutes, so under control extremely quickly. We have debriefed this, and we're absolutely confident in our plans. And let me just reassure London that we are tried and tested at this. We're not doing this alone. We've reviewed our plans, and I'm absolutely confident that we will deliver this in a manner that will be safe and secure for everyone that actually comes to London.
International news, and Russia has accused Ukraine of trying to assassinate President Putin in an overnight drone attack. A video appears to show the Kremlin being hit late last night. Moscow says 2 drones targeted President Putin's residence, but that they managed to thwart the attack, disabling the aircraft with electronic defences. President Zelensky has denied it was a responsibility of Ukraine. Russia's parliament speaker has demanded the use of weapons that would be capable of destroying what it described as the Kyiv terrorist regime. Air alerts in the capital, Kyiv, and other eastern regions have been sounding. Here, the Prime Minister says he's aware tomorrow's local elections in England will be tough for the Conservative Party. At PMQs earlier on today, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer clashed over higher mortgages and a shortage of homes in their final exchange before voting tomorrow. On the last day of campaigning, Rishi Sunak says he's focused on delivering on the people's priorities, both locally and nationally.
We've always said these are going to be a tough set of elections for us. We're concentrating on delivering on people's priorities to a local level. That's about lower council tax, where Conservative areas have council tax that's on average £80 lower than Labour ones. Crime is lower, and we fill more potholes. Nationally, I'm focused on my 5 priorities. That's halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists, and stopping the votes. We're going to keep delivering for people. My priorities are the people's priorities.
Downing Street says Partygate investigator Sue Gray's refusal to cooperate with a government probe into her move to a senior Labour role is obviously disappointing. Number 10 also denied claims that the Prime Minister could be pursuing a vendetta against the former senior official. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, said it's up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the start date for her new role. The England and Wales Cricket Board is recommending fines totalling £37,000 for those involved in the Yorkshire racism scandal. Former England international Gary Ballance was hit the hardest with a fine of £8,000 and a suspension for 8 weeks. Ballance is one of 6 who was accused of using racist language from allegations made by former Yorkshire bowler Azim Rafiq. The ECB took into account the fact that Ballance had admitted the charge and apologised. More than 7 million households will receive a £301 cost of living payment by the end of today. The money's part of a package of government support to help struggling households. A further £300 will be made available to eligible families by the autumn, and a similar payment will then be made in spring next year. And ahead of the coronation, 3 dresses, once owned by Diana, Princess of Wales, will go on display at the Museum of Style Icons in Ireland before being auctioned off. The outfits will actually go under the hammer in Los Angeles in August. They're expected to sell for between £280,000 and £550,000. You with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here at the Palace, and there's only one place for me to start this hour, isn't it? And that's Donald Trump's exclusive interview with Nigel Farage, which will air here on GB News at 7 p.m. And one of the top lines out of it, straight off the bat, is that he has told Nigel that he believes that Meghan Markle treated our late Queen with disrespect. Now, I'm joined by David Starkey, who's right here on my side. We found this out at the same time as everybody else joining the bulletins there. David, do you think that Trump's right?
Of course. And not only Meghan, Harry. And again, there's something that we really do need to focus on, and this is very important. They both knew the Queen was dying, unlike us.
Yes.
This matters. So the whole way in which this saga was constantly pushed, in which every single detail was deployed as a kind of campaign to slightly... there's a touch of racism. There was this wasn't quite right, that wasn't quite right, to a dying woman.
Yeah.
Who is the only reason that Harry exists, the only reason that he enjoys the wealth that he does, the only reason they do. I think it's awfully distasteful. And there's always, not always, but so often, Trump just puts his finger straight on it.
Straight on the pulse.
Without beating around the bush, and just says it. And he has to be right. I mean, Meghan, in one sense, I think, is more excusable than Harry. I mean, I think Harry's behaviour has been a kind... I mean, you hesitate to use words like treachery, and because of the overtone of traitor, but there really is a sense of his turning on his roots, turning on his family, and in the dying days of his grandmother, whom he claimed to love.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know what you think about this. GBviews at gbnews.uk. That is the breaking news that we just brought you. Donald Trump was interviewed by Nigel Farage. That'll go live in about an hour and 50 minutes' time, right here, exclusively on GB News. We're going to bring you more lines out of that interview, but one of those top ones there was that Donald Trump said that he thought that Meghan Markle treated our Queen with disrespect. And as David has said there, I really think that's absolutely spot on. And not just the fact that they knew the Queen was dying, Prince Philip as well, we have to bear that in mind. And their coordinated attempts to try to rile up the media, bring Netflix in, accuse the royal family, and I would say as well, actually, unashamedly, Britain as a whole of being some kind of racist cesspit of a nation really is absolutely staggering. And I can't help but wonder whether or not, if President Trump was still in charge, he might have had a look at Harry's visa.
Well, apparently there's plenty of detailed evidence that could be used.
Yes.
We've seen quite a few photographs, haven't we?
We have.
Of substances going not too far from nostrils. So, and admissions. And normally that means you don't get a visa. Certainly you don't remain resident. On the other hand, if it were applied literally, California would be practically empty.
Well, California would indeed be empty.
And there would be nobody in Hollywood at all.
No, and to be fair as well, so would London if we applied the same rules here. But anyway,
I couldn't possibly. You may be an expert on that, I'm not.
Now, to Saturday's coronation, not before time. Calls to replace the national anthem. Now, believe it or not, around a third of people do want it replaced. They're mostly young, woke people, though. Now, God Save the King has been sung since the 18th century, but a poll shows that it's now unpopular with a significant number of people. 1/3 of people are looking to change our national anthem, and there were some options that they were given, but here at GB News, of course, we adore the national anthem, as indeed you can imagine. It'd be wrong if we didn't, wouldn't it? In fact, we like it so much that we play it every single morning before our breakfast show. And so here's a little reminder of just how rousing it can sound in all of its resplendent glory, and this is from the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph last November. Well, it is time, of course, for me to bring David Starkey back into the mix now. We spoke a little bit in the last hour, didn't we, about why it's so important, why it's so historic, and indeed other nations have tried to copy ours pretty much exactly. So I don't think we should be changing it anytime soon. The question would be, though, instead of replacing it with another song, whether we should write a new one.
Yes, and who's going to compose it?
Well, my knowledge of composers, David, you could write.
I think what we're going to find out when we listen to the modern compositions at the Coronation is, on the whole, they're pretty dirge-like too. You would have to go to some, maybe Lloyd Webber, but on the whole, they're, well, not ultra memorable. I think the more important thing is what its virtues are. See, one of the things I think is really important about it, we're constantly told, especially by people on the left, those who dislike the national anthem, that England has become sort of wickedly nationalistic, you know, where particularly GBNews, we're sort of toe-dragging nationalists. It is the least nationalist national anthem you can think of. It doesn't talk about England at all. It talks about a loyalty to one individual who, of course, has no power. There's no comparison again when people were talking about, for example, the Oath of Allegiance, saying, oh, it's fascistic to swear loyalty to one person. But you're doing it to somebody who is a symbol, who doesn't actually wield power. And I think dare I say, the dignified, almost hymn-like quality of the British national anthem is part of its merit. In other words, it's not a kind of up and atom. It's not good for a rugby match. I mean, let's face it, it's not good for a rugby match.
This is why I think, I think you hit the nail on the head, because this is why I think so many people go, well, you know, a national anthem, is it a little bit naff? And it's because they mainly hear it before England kick off at the football or
and it's just not suitable. And it is not suitable for that purpose.
And it's not as rousing. But one thing I will say is that whenever there's a World Cup or a Euro song, you realise how catastrophically awful a lot of other countries' national anthems are. So you think maybe we are quite lucky to have it actually. But look, I went out and about earlier and I spoke to people about this, because some of the options to replace the national anthem, by the way, if you've got any suggestions, get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We've got Land of Hope and Glory, right, Rule Britannia, but though for obvious reasons we couldn't possibly have those, and those reasons are, David?
Well, they are, well, there's Empire, Empire and Empire, and Slaves in Rule Britannia, and the other great one, because the most wonderful tune, is Jerusalem, but it's only about England. The feet didn't tread on Ireland, they didn't tread on Wales, they didn't tread on Scotland, they only tread on the sacred turf of England. So that doesn't work either.
It would be a gift for Humza Yousaf if we changed our national anthem, wouldn't it? There we go, they'd be straight out the door again. But so I put some of these options, including some, I will say, modern classics, actually. Sweet Caroline, we've heard that belting around Wembley and to a lesser extent the stadiums in Qatar, didn't we? And Wonderwall by Oasis. Both of these scored relatively highly, a combined 13%, I know, 13% of people in this country wanted Sweet Caroline or Wonderwall by Oasis to be our new national anthem. It's fair to say that was given short shrift by the wonderful people lining them out in preparation for the coronation on Saturday. Take it away.
No. We've got to keep the national anthem. Yes, definitely.
So you wouldn't...
We've had it for years and years. We don't want any change.
You wouldn't want Wonderwall by Oasis, then?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
So why do you think we need to keep our national anthem?
Because it's history. It's been around for years and years, so why change it?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. Sorry. No, I'm a traditionalist and God save the King, and yeah, no, not having any of that.
Can I give you a couple of options that they want to change it to?
Okay.
Rule Britannia.
I like Rule Britannia, but I'm sorry, our anthem's our anthem and I'm not changing it.
You're going to be absolutely dead against Wonderwall by Oasis then, aren't you?
Yes, but I do like Oasis, but no, I don't want that either. Okay. No, we keep what we got.
I love our national anthem. When I sing the national anthem, it comes from here. I sing it with pride. I sing it with immense meaning, immense feeling. My father taught me the national anthem. As a girl guide, I had to learn all the verses. How many children? Don't ask me to sing them now, it's many years ago.
I won't ask you to sing it, but what I will say is you learnt that as a child, but it's the younger generation now who are most opposed to the national anthem.
But then they've not been taught what its meaning is. They've not been taught the importance of it. And maybe it's about education and love and passion.
Well, there you go. Now, it will be no surprise to a lot of people that Generation Z, as they are known, so the under-25s, 42% of them wanted us to ditch our national anthem. And as the lady was saying now, I just wonder whether or not we might be better starting to be more proud of it when we're in schools and get school children singing it. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, this is some kind of flag-waving nationalism and all of this stuff, but isn't it just a nice symbol of unity? But some other news, more serious news. Eagle-eyed and eagle-eared viewers of GB News last night would have seen some lively stuff from Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Cole as a controlled explosion went off just behind me there. A security operation now for the Coronation will be even bigger than that carried out for the Queen's funeral. Police have confirmed today 29,000 officers will be on duty in the lead up to Saturday and over the bank holiday weekend as well. It comes after that dramatic incident last night. A man was arrested after suspected shotgun cartridges were thrown into the grounds of Buckingham Palace. We can see some footage there of a man being arrested and led away from Buckingham Palace. He was arrested on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon after a knife was found, and the matter is not being treated as terror-related. But ahead of the Coronation, police have also been given extra powers to stop protests like the one staged by groups like Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rising. Those have taken place in recent months. Anti-monarchists as well, groups like Republic. Well, they claim that they've been sent, what they've called anyway, an intimidatory letter to tell them about the new legislation, which was given royal assent by the King yesterday. Now, this is not just a Coronation story, because that was given royal assent, which means that it's going to be in force for, well, indefinitely. So going forward, these things will actually be enforced. Now, former National Security Advisor Sir Mark Lyle Grant joins me now. So, Mark, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Look, first of all, what do you make of these new pieces of legislation which are coming in, which would mean longer times in prison, the police allowed to search people for things like bike locks and glue, etc., and basically be able to act more swiftly?
Well, it's a response by the government to some of the more disruptive protests that we've seen in recent years, particularly from groups like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, who've not only protested on behalf of their cause, but also caused massive disruption, both to the highways, to critical national infrastructure, and are creating more of a sort of public nuisance. And I think, Patrick, frankly, the public are a bit fed up with it as well. And I think that these slightly tougher measures in the Public Order Act that have been agreed this week will probably be welcomed by the majority of people in this country.
Yeah, they absolutely will. I tell you who they'll also be welcomed by, the police, because the police were getting sick and tired of, frankly, people like me say, why can't you do more to stop these slow-walking, orange-clad numpties from bringing cities to a halt and gluing themselves to everything? And the police were basically saying, look, we're doing everything that's in our power. We can't do any more. We can't just behave illegally. Well, now, thanks to this Public Order Act, they might actually be able to step in and do something quicker.
Yes, because the police were taking people away, but they weren't able to arrest them formally. They weren't able to charge them. And so these people were just released. And as you say, they're chaining themselves to railings, they're gluing themselves to the pavement. And although, of course, it's right in a democracy like ours that people should be able to protest and protest loudly for their cause, they shouldn't be causing a major nuisance both to the public and also costing the taxpayer huge amounts of money. I think the police have spent millions of pounds policing Just Stop Oil, for instance. So I think this is right to tighten this legislation, and I think the balance that's been reached in Parliament is probably about right.
Yeah, and like I said, it does mean that police will be allowed to act a little bit more proactively, so they will be able to search people who they suspect are actually going to be in possession of things like bike locks, etc., and also additional powers of arrest for people and longer prison sentences as well for people who actually chain themselves to things. So up to 12 months in prison and an unlimited fine for protesters who block roads. And the thinking there will clearly be that it means that they can get them on a repeat offence, and then they'll run out of money, fingers crossed. The new offence of interfering with key national infrastructure such as oil refineries, airports, railways, 6 months in prison and again an unlimited fine for anyone who locks themselves onto another person, object or building. Is this a sign of the law and the government moving quickly to identify an increasingly modern threat and deal with it?
I think they're certainly updating legislation that was becoming out of date given the changing nature of protests and the more targeted, violent protests, if you like, against property and against critical national infrastructure. I don't think it would change if there was a change of government in the next couple of years, because I think the police, as you rightly say, Patrick, greatly welcome this, and that will make their job easier. So policing major events like the Coronation on Saturday will be made slightly easier by this type of legislation. So I think in that sense, it's a sensible step forward. And I think, as I say, the balance between a sort of heavy-handed police state, which some protesters have argued is coming in because of this legislation, and the need to prevent violent public nuisance for people going about their lawful business and being expected as taxpayers to pay for the policing, which the police don't have the powers to do effectively. So I think it's a sensible move forward.
Absolutely. So, Mark, thank you very much. And the way I would bracket it to these people who are intent on causing a nuisance is this. Look, we're actually saving you from yourselves, because the patience of the British public is going to run out very, very soon. In fact, in many other countries, they would have been run over with cars by now. People would have filled them in completely. You don't really get that in this country. And I think it is actually, the patience is being tested to the max. And I think if they rocked up and tried to disrupt the Coronation, then they might find out which side the British people's bread is buttered on. But there we go. Moving on from all of that now, I'm going to be talking about loads more in the run-up to this Coronation, but the government is spending £30 million on a major clampdown on fraud, and I want to know what you think about all of this. But this is a big one, okay? So there's going to be a big clampdown on fraud, so cold callers might finally be a thing of the past. I'll tell you what, in Patrick Christys Britain, they get locked up forever. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
don't you just hate it? You're sitting at home, you're enjoying your day, you're going about your business, and the phone goes and you answer it, and it's someone claiming to be called Steve, but it does sound like they're in a very far away country, doesn't it? And they're badgering you about a way to make millions of pounds. Or they're trying to sell you something, or they're telling you they're the police, or they're telling you whatever they are. But the fact is that these are just crank, cold callers, and they want to rob you blind. And all too often, they are successful. But the government is now stepping in, and they're spending £30 million in a major clampdown on fraud. It includes a ban on cold calling by firms who are trying to sell financial products. So, fingers crossed, if you get a call and it's someone who's trying to sell you something financial, you will know it's fake. Now, Rishi Sunak says that they're trying to fight the fraudsters, and they're setting up a new national fraud squad with 400 new specialist investigators. So they're all going to be working very diligently. Here's what he had to say.
Plans we've announced today are robust. They will stop frauds from happening at source. We've got 400 more people in a national fraud squad, and we're going to make it easier for people to report fraud. But crucially, whether we're banning SIM farms, number spoofing, or online media companies getting rid of those fake celebrity endorsement adverts, all these things will stop fraud from happening.
Very pleased to say that I'm joined now by former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley. I mean, this guy really knows his thing about law enforcement. And Peter, one story that always sticks with me is when I was a local reporter up in Cumbria, some poor elderly lady got a phone call from someone who claimed to be from her bank. They actually walked her to the bank over the phone, and she withdrew her entire life savings, put it in their bank account, and it was lost forever. Peter, these people are scumbags.
And heartbreakingly, there are literally millions of stories like that of the victim that you knew, because fraud is operating on a global scale. It is the crime that you, I, and all the listeners and viewers are most likely to fall victim of. And today, I welcome the announcement by the government. These extra resources will help and will go some way to tackling this absolute pandemic of criminality. But of course, there is a responsibility on us all to do whatever we can to ensure that we don't become victims of these pernicious crimes.
Peter, I want you to just inform our viewers and our listeners what they can do to keep themselves safe and what to look out for.
OK, well, the first thing I would strongly suggest is the Telephone Preference Service, TPS. If you don't have a computer, you can look it up or get a friend to look it up online for you and register with TPS. That will stop a percentage of fraudulent calls coming through, not only to your landline, but to your mobile, if you've got one. So the Telephone Preference Service, please do that. If you are online and you have an email account and you receive an email that looks suspicious, my advice is please take a breath. Do not act immediately with any request for money wherever it comes to you, because these fraudsters work on psychology. They know that if you are frightened because you suddenly feel you owe money to the taxman or to a bank or to some other body, you might act swiftly, and that works to their benefit. So if you get one of these, and they're called phishing emails, that's PHI phishing as opposed to an F, please forward any such emails to the following email address. That is phishing, spelt PHISHING, phishing @gov.uk. And those frauds do get investigated, and the government has taken down over 200,000 such potential fraud sites just because people have sent them those emails in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter as well. I mean, look, the government is presumably doing all that it can for this, and they would have good men, a bit like you maybe in a former life as well, working on it, and women, and they are doing everything that they possibly can. But sometimes the best help might come from home, and if you do feel as though maybe one of your relatives, possibly elderly, dare I say it, I'm going to get a lot of abuse here from some very savvy, switched-on elderly people, of course, who watch this show, but who might you feel be falling victim to something or be at risk of being conned, maybe the family should ask a couple of questions, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And if there's an elderly neighbour that you know, please, we've got a bank holiday Coronation weekend coming up. Take the time to knock on the door. Find out if that person has registered with the TPS. Find out if they're online. Help them with passwords. Help them with any suspicious emails. Please tell them, never ring your bank back. If you get a text saying ring the bank or ring Her Majesty's Revenue, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs as a matter of urgency, please don't do it. Just impart some advice, be there for them if ever they need you, and let's collectively, as well as the government, do all we can to try and thwart these repugnant fraudsters.
Absolutely. I think that their punishment, Peter, really, once they've fleeced some poor old lady out of all of her hard-earned cash, should just be to lock them in a room with you. But, of course, we can't do that these days. Peter Blessy, thank you very much. Former top cop there. Just giving you, I hope, anyway, some helpful advice about how you can stop being defrauded and your family and your loved ones being defrauded. And if you do think, seriously, oh, it could never happen to me, I would never fall for it, you would be surprised. They are everywhere, this lot. They are everywhere, and they are very smart. So please be vigilant. Do not fall victim to that filth. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. I am going to get the reactions of former Chancellor George Osborne calling for smoking to be banned. He's not a particular fan of orange juice either, so I'm not sure what he wants, maybe grape juice. Anyway, and the godfather of AI, artificial intelligence, left Google and warned about its dangers. I will ask, are computers going to take over the world? In other news as well, I just want to quickly highlight, we've got a big interview coming up. President Donald Trump talks exclusively to Nigel Farage right here on GB News at 7. I'll bring you a clip from that shortly. Now, headlines with Polly.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Well, the top stories this hour. We've had some breaking news. In fact, Donald Trump has told GB News he believes Meghan Markle treated the late Queen with disrespect. And in an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage, the former US president gave his take on the King's coronation.
I think it's going to be a great day, and I think that they will do a great job.
Yeah.
And he loves the country. Really, I got to know him quite well, and he loves the country, really loves the country, and he loved his mother. And that's why I thought she was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
Well, you can see that interview in full. It's a world exclusive with Donald Trump tonight on Farage at 7 p.m. Meanwhile, let's bring you up to date with events concerning the coronation, and 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security surrounding the event. The Met Police has confirmed the scale of the operation is bigger than that of the Queen's funeral. The force also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates. There was a controlled explosion after the suspect told officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. And also in the news today, Russia is accusing Ukraine of trying to assassinate President Putin in an overnight drone attack, with a video appearing to show the Kremlin being hit late last night. Moscow says 2 drones targeted Putin's residence, but they managed to disable the aircraft with electronic defences. Russia's parliamentary speaker has demanded the use of weapons that are capable of destroying what it described as a terrorist regime. President Zelensky says Ukraine wasn't responsible for the attack. Those are the latest news headlines. I'm back in half an hour. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
A quick snapshot now of today's markets, and the pound will buy you $1.2551 and €1.1358 euros. The price of gold is £1,613 and 83 pence an ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed today at 7,788 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Now, for some, this might sound a little bit like wanting the nanny state to ruin our lives, but former Chancellor George Osborne, yet remember him, has called for more to be done to stop us from smoking and consuming unhealthy food and drink. And I'm just going to speak personally here when I say get lost. OK. Speaking to The Times, he says that the government should raise the legal age for buying tobacco in order to phase out smoking. Osborne also wants the sugar tax on soft drinks to be extended to include fruit juice, milkshakes, as well as biscuits and cakes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this a guy who once did something pretty fruity with the old Greg's pasty? I think that was him, wasn't it? Anyway, this, he says, will help fight obesity and cancer. Joining me now is the former presenter of Fat Families, an absolute fan favourite here at GB News. It's the wonderful Steve Miller. Look, Steve, I remain unconvinced that by getting people to live a healthier life, the answer to that is to enforce rules and regs onto them. Is this not nanny statism?
Well, first of all, where's this come from? He's suddenly jumped out some closet somewhere, hasn't he? And is now talking to us about orange juice and ciggies. And I have to say, I'm sure that I've seen George Osborne having a fag, to be honest with you. I'm sure that there has been footage of him smoking. However, do I think it should be banned? No, I don't think we should have an outright ban because everyone has their vices. But, you know, and we have around 6.5 million smokers in the UK. Do I think that we should increase the age at which you buy those ciggies? Yes, I do, because it ain't good for you. Because we all know, common sense tells us heart disease and strokes and cancers and all of those horrible things. Not to mention, I mean, have you ever looked at a lifetime smoker's skin? It's really dry and it ain't good. It's very leathery. So it's not good for your skin either. And who wants to snog a smoker? So I think in terms of health, he has a point. I do think he's got a point on that. When it comes to this, orange juice, right, he's off his trolley, right? Because orange juice is really pretty good anyway, as long as it's pure. But what he's talking about here, Patrick, is a fat tax. That's what he's talking about. Now, the fat tax is unfair. I do not support it. Because why should those that are responsible have to pay more? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not in favour of that. And the other thing to say, and then I will shut up, is in Denmark, they tried this fat tax, right? They tried the fat tax, and guess what? It failed for lots of reasons. Inflation went through, well, not exactly through the roof in a year, but it went higher. And 80% of the Danes did not change their eating habits. And in fact, some went over the borders to actually start shopping. So they actually scrapped it over time. It just didn't work. So I think Mr. Osborne has got a point in terms of increasing the age for smokers, because we don't want that. But in terms of, you know, tax, all we talk about in this country is tax.
It's so true. It's so true. Now, whilst I am sympathetic, of course, that there are loads of people on NHS waiting lists and that the NHS is, is supposedly on its knees and all of this stuff, I don't believe that the best way to do it is to put people into essentially forced fitness camps, which is what this is, with a fat tax. And people do need to, I think, be able to make their own decisions for them. People do know that smoking is bad for them, and if people actively choose to do it, then so be it. And there is an argument that the amount of tax that they pay on their fags actually accounts for their NHS care in the long run. And I just think, Steve, that we are hurtling headfirst towards some kind of really quite dystopian future, and maybe even non-smokers should be quite pleased with smokers as acting as some kind of buffer between them and everything that they love being taxed as well. But Steve, if people want to get healthier, I don't think the best way to do it is to control them. The best way to do it is what, Steve? Come on, you are an expert here on how people can lose weight and get healthier and feel good about themselves. Come on.
My God, you'll be calling me a guru next. Right, I think if people want to get healthy when it comes to weight loss and their weight, they live an 80-20 lifestyle, 80% healthy, 20% to what you fancy, but they also nurture their mind at the same time. People need to realise that it's not just about a diet. They've got to take this this sounds a bit cheesy, but this kind of holistic approach really to move forward and to nurture their mind, feed their mind as well as feeding their mouths, their stomach and so forth. So it is about personal responsibility. What we can't do is keep blaming the government, yeah, because we've been doing that for far too long. We have to take responsibility. We have to own our bodies. And then guess what? We can all party well into our 80s, probably into our 90s.
Absolutely. Look, Steve, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Steve Miller there, who is a former presenter of Fat Families, and you might be able to hear a little bit of action kicking off behind me. Cheers, Steve. I'll see you next time. A bit of action kicking off behind me here. I'm not sure exactly what this is. Should we have a quick look? It is Patrick Christys at Buckingham Palace here. I'm joined by David Starkey. Any ideas, David? None whatsoever. There we go. Somebody far more important. Far more important than you and I, yes. And there is a little garden party going on just behind me.
Rather a large one, I think.
Oh, rather
Several
large.
thousand.
Several thousand? Well, that just makes it even more cutting that I haven't received an invite. Why haven't you?
I'm out of favour.
You're out of favour? Oh, well, there we go. Anyway, well, welcome to the club. All right, OK, so artificial intelligence is here to stay, and I think we could all agree that maybe it could do with a little bit more of it on this show. But will it do... Why are you laughing? Will it do more harm than good? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm off for a ciggy.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Coming up tonight from 7, a world exclusive. Join Nigel live from Trump's golf course in Scotland.
It's great.
It's
Nice to see
fantastic.
you.
Everything about it's beautiful.
It's great to have you here.
The last time you were on GB News was the day that the Queen died.
That's right.
And you came
That's
on.
right.
You came on and paid a tribute to her.
What a great woman.
You ready?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Farage, the Trump interview, tonight at 7 only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News. It is a beautiful sunny evening here at Buckingham Palace, and some very lucky people are in the palace behind me now, a couple of thousand of them apparently, for a garden party and a drinks reception. Yes, my invite must have got lost in the post, but I'm close enough for me. Look, keep your eyes and ears peeled for that Nigel Farage, Donald Trump interview. You're only going to get it on GB News, and from what we know about it already, it's explosive, okay? So he's come after Meghan Markle big time. He said that he was surprised that Harry was even invited to the coronation. He accused Meghan of disrespecting our Queen, and as he does all so often, Donald Trump, I think, therefore, having his finger bang on the pulse. You're not going to want to miss that interview later on. Nigel Farage, Donald Trump, right here on GB News, 7 p.m. Be there. But we are counting down Saturday's coronation of King Charles III, and of course GB News really is the coronation station. But it's not just royal stories in town. No, it's not, people. No, it's not. How dangerous is artificial intelligence? People always told me that if I had any intelligence I would be dangerous, but apparently artificial intelligence is even more lethal than me. It's having more and more of an impact in the modern world. And this week, the boss of IBM has said that he expects AI and automation to replace 7,800 jobs within the next 5 years. So the tech giant CEO has basically said that he could easily see nearly 1/3 of the company's workforce and new customer-facing roles being replaced. But this isn't the only danger, okay? So we have got the idea that AI might come for your job, which is a thing that a lot of people care about. If you really think about it now, how many jobs could probably be done by a highly intelligent robot? We've also got the risk of war, because some weapons are controlled by AI, and in the hands of a rather nefarious dictator, it would be quite easy to see how that could go wrong. There is also just a chance that it might, like every sci-fi film we've ever seen, just go terribly wrong. This stuff is going to get more intelligent than we are, and it is going to do it very quickly. It thinks differently, it behaves differently. Joining me now is technology journalist Will Guyatt. Now, Will, I am very concerned about the idea that so many people who seem to have had an initial hand in AI are now telling us that we need to stop it because, well, basically, we don't know what it's going to do to us.
Yeah, that's quite true, Patrick, and lots of people are coming out now. We've had one of the fathers of AI coming out this week. He worked for Google, Geoffrey Hinton, and he said that, you know, he feels that there's a very high probability that AI will very soon become more intelligent than humans. You've got other people who've coded artificial intelligence and then created artificial intelligence, saying that they're actually increasingly concerned it could be the end of mankind. There are people who are genuinely worried about this technology now, Patrick, and it's kind of hard to know how you can put the genie back in the bottle here. There's lots of things to be worried about with artificial intelligence, but there are some incredibly positive stories too. One such example, very quickly, Oxford University in the last few weeks have developed a system with the NHS which is better at identifying potential organ matches for donations than human beings have ever been in the history of doing it. So that's just one example of how AI can be used for positive effect.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, the dream would be that we just have an amazing superhuman force for good that might even be able to crack dilemmas that we've had when it comes to interstellar travel and, frankly, our rules of physics. I mean, this actually could quite possibly be the answer to a lot of those issues and save loads of lives. But when I'm looking at things that Elon Musk is saying, which is we need to pause this thing now for at least 6 months until we find out what we've created, well, frankly, that keeps me up at night.
Now, I agree with you there, but Elon Musk doesn't really have a current horse in the AI race. So that's one of the reasons why he's also calling for it to be slowed down. But we do face a challenge. There's no regulation here. Billions and billions of dollars are being spent on developing this technology. They're not publicly sharing it. They're not giving us regular updates. Each time we get something new, it's a massive jump, and we're talking months for these massive jumps in intelligence rather than years. So the big challenge here, like you say, is how do you regulate it? And if let's say the UK and America are going to play by the rules, what's to stop China, North Korea, Russia, any other country deemed evil by the West from not following those particular rules that we're adhering to? So it's hard to know how you put the genie back in the bottle, and it's hard to know how you stop this being used for bad things. But I still remain hopeful that as humanity we can use this tech for good. But the reality is, in the last few months, we've had some of the big accountancy companies suggesting that 300 million jobs will be lost within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're all going to be doing with ourselves. And Patrick, you and I are at risk here too. We use our voices, we use our likenesses to do this kind of stuff. Arguably, they could either replace us with a virtual version of ourselves or just create a virtual person that's nothing like us. So we could be replaced too.
Well, Will, one thing I will say is why I always try to inject as much chaotic energy as I possibly can into this show is so that the day that AI comes for newsreaders and journalists, I will be at the back of the queue. There's no way that you could replicate this kind of lunacy on air, although maybe that will just lead to me losing my job without AI anyway. So it swings and roundabouts, Will. I say that with my eyes wide open. How catastrophically awful could AI actually go for us, though? I mean, are we over-exaggerating, or could this thing just decide it's in the best interest of humanity to nuke the living heck out of us?
10% of people involved in the creation of AI genuinely believe there is a risk at making humankind extinct if the right safeguards aren't put in place. So there is the reality that this artificial intelligence, if used in the wrong way, could decide that the planet and society is actually easier to negotiate and navigate without human beings getting in the way. It is entirely possible.
Look, Will, thank you very much. Great stuff as ever. Will Guyatt there, technology journalist. And in fact, actually, sorry, Will, while I've got you, just one more. Do you know much about how the way that AI actually learns? Because we learn, or in my case I don't, but we learn, is it in a linear way? Is that right? Whereas this thing learns exponentially. I just wonder if we know what that really means.
Yeah, generative AI is essentially you could pour a lot of information into these systems at any one time, Patrick. So let's say, for example, you could get the whole casebook of a load of doctors and load it into a system. That's why this organ detection thing I was talking about earlier has worked so well. They've put so much human data learned by humans into this system, and it's kind of soaked it all up at once. And that's one of the things. This is why these things are so potentially very powerful, because they can acquire knowledge at speed quicker than human beings.
Will, thank you. Great stuff. Will Guyatt there, saying goodbye to him for the second time. This time I mean it. Technology journalist just reacting to this startling news that 10% of people who are involved in the creation of AI now think it might lead to the end of humanity. Loads of them are stepping back. People are absolutely terrified of it. I mean, you know, just because we can't necessarily see it and reach out and touch it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be scared of it as well. David Starkey's back. I'm just going to give the old final farewell to you, David. David, I think we've been at this wonderful location here at the Palace. We've spoken to some fabulous people out on the Mall. We've seen the garden party taking off over there. I've got sunburn on just one half of my face. I mean, we really are gearing up for the coronation.
We are indeed. I've got sunburn on the back of my neck.
I'll bring the factor 50 tomorrow. But look, just for our viewers and our listeners there, what kind of stuff can we expect over the next day or so, do you think, really?
And more of the same, I think. Well, the one thing we don't want is another terrorist incident.
No.
I mean, this is the thing that's worrying me.
It's important to say that it's not officially been declared.
And
so
thank you for
That's
the
all right.
correction. The problem is it's such a delicate balance. People want to get here. They want to be here. They want to feel part of the thing. They want to get as close to that building which represents the monarchy as they can, and yet security says no.
Yeah.
And it's a knife edge in so many areas of our public life. Now, once again, I think one of the reasons for the distancing of our politicians are the gates of Downing Street. And it is always security. It's never diminished.
Yeah.
It always goes up.
Absolutely, and people go, oh, you know, King Charles, I saw him drive past yesterday, actually, and they go, wow, you know, he's so distant from us, isn't he? Firstly, I don't think he is. The second thing is, if everyone's going to start trying to egg him and throw things at him, then it's not exactly going to help matters, is it? And then they all just go rather self-defeating, if you ask me. Oh, isn't our king so distant? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, can I just also say a very personal thank you to everyone, and it is just so many of you, actually, who are watching GB News, listening to us, and consumers, whether it's online or however you do it, who have just, as I've been out and about here, coming up to say hello and, you know, giving me a big hug or shaking my hand, and not just me, but the other GB News presenters as well. There really is a proper family atmosphere here at the Palace. So if you are around the area or anything like that, then do just pop along and say hello, because there's loads of people here who are all building up to this coronation alongside us here at GB News. Look, I'll be back again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Michelle Dewberry's on next, and she's going to be on for the next hour. Make sure you keep yourselves locked in for that. But boy, oh boy, you will not want to miss what Nigel Farage's show has got lined up for you. 7 p.m. he has sat down exclusively with the one and only Donald Trump, only on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at